I'll tell you.
Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. This is a school board workshop. The time is now 1 p.m. The order of business today for the workshop is the number one, superintendent's evaluation instrument for 45 minutes. Second is Florida Safe Schools Assessment Tools for 60 minutes. The third is the Office of Legal Services update for 60 minutes. And number four would be the attorney evaluation instrument for 60 minutes. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Bernier, which then you're going to turn it over to Dr. Savage. Okay.
I will do so, ma'am, but just as a reminder to the board, this was an original work session that was planned for last week. We actually tabled the work session because of the storm and the amount of work that was going on during the time, and we thought the more intensive use of that time was to give a hurricane update versus discussing the evaluations and this business moving forward. We will still continue to do a hurricane update this evening, and we will now add that permanently to the board agenda. So every time the board meets officially in an action meeting, there will be a hurricane update on that agenda so that we can keep both you and the public apprised of all of our developments. We're also going to be adding it to future workshops as well. So we'll have that opportunity to continue with the cadence of our board meeting on Tuesday and the following Wednesday being a workshop. We'll be able to keep a weekly public update as well. So we got 4 items today. This is really back to the business of the school district, and the first is the superintendent's evaluation instrument. As you recall, prior to Ian, we were looking at an instrument. We were gathering feedback. Dr. Savage and I have worked heavily and hard on some of that feedback, and he would like to present today the instrument that we believe is now ready, and an opportunity for us to look at timelines in preparation for November 1st. So, Ken?
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, Dr. Savage.
No, please. Thank you, sir, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, esteemed board members, Dr. Bernier, and Attorney Dupuy Bruno. For today, the major milestone that we'll look for today at the board's pleasure, of course, will be to remove the draft label from what has been a working document. And as of today, if we want to proceed, would become our current working instrument. Certainly, we would have the ability to modify or replace this instrument as we have done over 17 times previous to today. But what this would allow us to proceed with is turning this document over to you as board members to begin evaluating your superintendent. What I would ask is that if the board decides to move forward today, then I would ask that you please complete your individual evaluation within the next 2 weeks. So I would offer October 31st midnight as the final deadline. That would give me the opportunity to compile the results on November 1st. That would be in time for that evening's action meeting. Again, I remind you that all of this is at the board's pleasure and discretion. So without further ado, I'll begin moving through the instrument. You each have a hard copy in front of you, and we'll go through that instrument. But over this slide, I'm going to just go over the broad structure again, because I know it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to talk. So the first is just the first section is the professional competencies, the second, the priority initiatives, and the third, our strategic plan goals. And we're going to go over each one of those. But before we do that, I just wanted to, one change that we made based on feedback was the rating labels that we're using here. The 4 labels, these are consistent with other evaluations within our district, both administrators, teachers. So this is a way of achieving more consistency across the organization. So we've made that adjustment as well. These are the 4 ratings defined, so those descriptions are there. It's important to remind you that really the rating of effective is the desired rating. That is meeting the expectations. Highly effective is unique in the sense that it really is about exceeding those expectations. And so this is a very important aspect to our district evaluation system, and it's consistent with the superintendents as well. I also think it's important to remind that pursuant to not only board policy but also Dr. Bernier's contract, if ratings are unsatisfactory, they do require an explanation as well as corrections as to what it is specifically that he needs to do to address that performance. So section 1 is broken down with 8 professional competency standards. In our prior instrument, we had 4 in the existing school district instrument, so this has 8, and these are those 8 pieces. Each one has their own page. You'll see this is a sample of the first one, the Leadership and District Culture Standard. Each of the 8 standards also have 8 indicators. Each indicator is a very concise indicator with the 4 different ratings for each of those 8 indicators within each standard. Then those 8 indicators, once you've clicked on each of those individual ratings, will create a performance rating for each of the 8 standards. All of that is done automatically. All you have to do as board members on there is click on the specific rating. The other piece is, of course, an opportunity to write qualitatively areas of strength as well as opportunities for improvement. So you can see, this is just an example. Again, I say it's a sample. This is just to show you kind of what that looks like. And then you could write in there. Now, one thing we've done in this instrument is you can type your qualitative aspects directly into the form. The PDF version will allow you to do that. But for those who prefer to handwrite, you also have the ability to handwrite if you wanted to click on your ratings and then have a handwritten copy on there. I have every ability to scan that if you prefer to have the handwritten, if you would prefer that as opposed to typing. Additionally, if you want to put more than the space allows, you can add, as you have in the past, additional typewritten document if you want to add more to what you have here. Evaluation Section 2 is unique. This is now about our district priority initiatives. So this is really focused on the short-term work of the district, but very essential work. So when we think about items such as the proximity plan, those are things that move our district forward. They certainly align to the strategic plan, but they are more short-term. They may take 1 to 2 to 3 years to actually accomplish, whereas a strategic plan by design, being Envision 2030, is far-reaching. And so that tracks metrics that we track every single year to ensure that we are making that long-term progress. But this allows for those very specific initiatives that are significant priorities to the district. Another good example that's very pertinent is the superintendent's entry plan. He had a very specific set of objectives that he wanted to accomplish when he came in, and that allows you to focus on those aspects that are certainly aligned with the feedback he's received, strategic issues. So it's not an either or, it's really, this is more of the short-term aspect of things that have to happen within that year, which then goes to Section 3, which really are the strategic plan outcomes that we have to look at every single year to ensure we are making progress. This is all about results for all of the students as well as for our workforce. All of these things really are there. They're set forward directly in our strategic plan. Those elements were taken directly from the plan, and you'll see those in your document as well. So those are the broad, at a high level, all 3 of those sections. And we're going to go through them momentarily. But before we do that, one last piece is very important to remind you. What you have in front of you right now is where we will intend to land in terms of a percentage of breakdown by section. 30% of the evaluation would be from the competency section, 35% on those district priority initiatives, 35% on the strategic plan goals. That would be for the next year. As we've discussed in the prior meetings, for this year, however, because Dr. Bernier was not here, those outcomes that were based on the prior work, it would count as 0% of his current evaluation instead, and for this year only, 40% would be derived from the professional competencies and 60% from those district priority initiatives. So that is, at the high level, those particular pieces. Before we get into the specific form about the high level, just wanted to give an opportunity for any questions before we actually go through the document, because I can pull that up as well. Or sir, did you have any comments I think you wanted to make first?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, if you look at the evaluation, and I thank you for the input that you have provided, section number 1 speaks to professional competencies. There are 8 in total. They range from pages 1 until page 10. What Dr. Savage has been explaining is each item is rated individually based upon a set of 8 criteria that meet the idea of standard 1, leadership and district culture. Then there are 8 separate items that make that up. That's a pull-down menu. If you rate an individual is needing improvement, then it will automatically tabulate that score. If you meet somebody's meeting expectation, it will automatically tabulate that score. And the instrument is coordinated with each other at each section to apply the proper percentage. So really what you have to do is you have to sit with yourself over the next 2 weeks. You've got 2 weekends. Ken and I talked about that today. We thought the weekend opportunity would be of value to have 2 weekends to work through. And really just sit down and say, how does Chris Bernier fit these criteria? Is he meeting my expectation? Is he not meeting my expectation? And then just the feedback for me is probably more important than the ratings. The areas of strength, as well as the areas for opportunities for improvement. I think those are critical important to me. I did contact my 360 assessment gentleman. I would like to hope to get some questions about the 360 today in your discussions so that we could talk a little bit more about that. There are 2 paths moving forward with that. And one of the things I'm required to provide you is a self-assessment. That self-assessment will be completed this week. It will not be as in-depth as I hoped it would have been. I'm running out of bandwidth, but I will set aside several evenings this week in order to make sure you have that from my perspective. But that truly is just my perspective. Your perspective is what matters to this instrument. And for the first 2 sections, that's all you, not all you need to do, it's kind of really important work that you need to do. But again, it's your idea of highly effective, effective, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. That's your individual decision to make. Dr. Savage, upon completion on the 31st of October, so if you're handing out Halloween candy and you haven't, that should be a key reminder that you've not finished the instrument yet. I love dates like that, and I use that because that's what I used to do with individual professional development plans in a former district. I always had them due on or before October 31st. So that would be the reminder to my teacher to say, uh-oh, I forgot to do that. So that's just a good reminder for all of us. We'll tabulate across, so each one of you will come up with an overall rating based upon how you deal with the first 2 areas of this evaluation this year. Those numbers will be combined and divided, and that will create the overall rating. We'll post that to a board action meeting, and we will have the opportunity to inform the public as to how I've been rated an interim, which was due in November of this coming year, and then we could have discussion about anything you wanted to talk about, certainly under your own public comments and opportunities to address that evaluation at that point. So that's kind of our overall view. Wished we had had the work session last week, but I think you understand why we focused more on the hurricane and we're moving to evaluations this week. So I would open it up to the board for your discussion and additional input.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Ms. Morgan?
Are you asking about the instrument itself?
Yes.
Because I do have 2 very minor comments.
Is that correct, Dr. Savage? You were looking?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any feedback, questions,
Okay.
either of the process or the instrument itself?
Perfect,
The
thank you.
instrument itself, my questions are 3.07, you say improves the district's cooperative relationship with other districts. That's a different verb than you've used throughout the instrument. It is a, I guess I would substitute maintains, because everything else, every other verb you use throughout this is basically a static one, and this one is anyway, that's a very minor. The other one, 7.07, I'm reading this and I'm trying to understand it. Recruits qualified minority and majority staff to be highly qualified in critical areas. Can you explain that to me in a different way so that I can understand it? I'm sorry.
I can help, Dr. Savage. I know what the intent of this was, and we can certainly wordsmith it in a better way. The idea would be that I would continually keep a focus on the diversity of our organization, and that we would recruit qualified candidates who also happen to be minority and fall into the minority and majority categories, so that we would begin to make inroads related to our employee workforce, and especially in leadership, mirroring as best we can the student population.
And that's how I read it, but that's how I believe it was intended, but that's not how it reads to me. It reads differently.
We'll
so.
make an edit there.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. And I think you did a terrific job. I really appreciate the level at which you attempt to extract real information about the performance. It's all tends to be measurable as opposed to qualitative, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. If I may just quickly respond, one thing I think it's important caveat is that I really did a lot of compiling from I didn't write any of this originally. All of this is borrowed from a host of many other evaluation instruments. So I really appreciate that. And that's why any substantive feedback you all have is very powerful for us, because this becomes our instrument once we adopt it.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Ms. Gittens, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Going to what Ms. Morgan was saying on that 707, it seems you can just kind of reshuffle the words that recruits highly qualified minority majority staff to serve in critical areas. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
If that works, and everybody else can discuss it. I had, on number 1, in the explanation, the very last line, maybe I'm just dull today, but
Is that one point?
yeah, no, in the top of it, in the blue, not in the sections. In a multicultural context. Context kind of leaves me, not sure what that word means, or if somebody else read that, what does that mean? Set priorities in the context of the community, serve as an articulate spokesperson for the welfare of all students in a multicultural, you've already said multicultural community, but to me it's like, it's clearer if you just say what it is. I don't know.
I think there's an opportunity here to use for the welfare of all students in a diverse community. The idea here was a sensitivity to, we have a tapestry that makes up Lee County. It's not a continuum, it's not a left or right, it's like a quilt. And every citizen, every person who lives in this community, every student that we serve is another patchwork in a piece of that quilt. So that we would approach it that way versus just African American, Black, white, Hispanic. But we could say that I would communicate in a manner and be a spokesperson for the welfare of all students in a diverse community. Would that be?
Okay,
What are your
I
liking?
kind of, it's not so much my liking, but I get a little bit of angst when we use the word diverse, because it has taken on a different connotation in our society today. And it raises red flags for people. I like the multicultural because I am convinced that it's cultural awareness that we need. You can have cultures in any race that are different. You can have, the Southern culture and the white race or Caucasian race. So multicultural, I think, is very good. It gets away from the stigma of diversity and jumping out at you like that. It just gives me a little bit of angst. So I totally agree with what you were saying, but just saying a multicultural district or whatever, the context is what kind of throws it off for me. And I know I stepped in a little bit late, but am I correct in saying our goal by the 31st is to do the Just 1 and 2, or to do the whole thing?
The way this assessment breaks down this year, we had this in a previous work session, the goals of the strategic plan and the outcomes related to student achievement, since I arrived when that test data was already in the bucket, if you will, we were not going to 3. We will provide information from our accountability and research team as to how we did related to those goals, but we had agreed earlier that my assessment would only include sections 1 and 2 this year. Next year it would include all 3, and Ken, if he can slide back and provide you the percentages, it would be.
And if I'm asking you to go over something I missed,
Oh.
then that's fine.
No, I don't, so it's always good to remind and
60/40.
and remember.
Okay. Okay, so our focus is on 1 and 2 for the main part. Thank you for that. It's very good, and I think, bless you. And question for Dr. Savage, the numbers have not changed, the scale has not changed, right?
When you say the scale,
The scale, the unsatisfactory, needs improvement, and all of that has stayed the same?
yes, what we did is remove the third decimal, just in consultation through the development that the third decimal was not necessary based on how the numbers actually come together, that really only the 2 decimals was necessary, but the actual values are the same. Then, of course, the big difference, of course, the section weighting that we have, that I have up on your screen here on that final page. It's what Dr. Bernier was referencing, the 40% being the professional competencies and the 60% being the district priority initiatives.
Right.
Those are kind of the 2 big scale pieces.
Did you, on the change in the standard weighting with the 12.5, did you do some samples to kind of see how that would work with removing the third decimal?
Yes.
Would it, I know you have, because when it's math, you're salivating over the numbers and the data, right? I just wanted to get that out there, that you did go through and see how that affected possibly the scores that different from before.
Yes. And actually, when I went through and tested this, one of the neat things on this is that, and I put it up on the screen specifically just to show, so essentially, when you get to the individual rating, you'll just click on that drop down. It'll automatically populate any of the ratings, so whether it's highly effective, whether it's needs improvement, and it'll automatically calculate at every minute so you can see how it's impacting the overarching goals. All these things will kind of give you a sense in real time as you complete them, exactly how things are progressing along with this tool. In addition to the typing, you'll literally, the same way that you would click on this, you don't have to type in any numbers at all. You'll just click on the ratings. That will take care of all the numbers. But for the qualitative aspect, you can type directly into the form. So when you type in, you can type right into the form, and it'll save all those pieces. So that's kind of the gist of what we wanted to go over today, just the process and the form itself. We also, tomorrow, if the board does proceed and decides they would like to move forward with this work right now, then the secondary piece is I'll be working with the 2 secretaries in the board office as well as our superintendent's office and going through with them so that you can have individual help from whoever it is you'd like to help you complete this form if you'd like any assistance.
I think we're going to give you a different name, the data count. The count of data. Well, thank you so much.
Sesame Street.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Anyone else have any, what's your name? Ms. Patrica? Ms. Patrica?
Yes, thank you. The district priority initiatives, I'm not sure how we can measure those right now. As I look through, just cursory glance, 1.6, 1.7 were impossible to complete, 2.2, 2.4, 2.6. I don't know how we were able to complete those. 3.3, 3.4, I don't know how those would be completed in time. So I'm not sure that this makes sense right now. Some of it does and some of it does not.
I clearly understood that when Ken and I have been squeezing out a few moments in the last 48 hours to talk about this. That's where I think my self-assessment can come in. and I can give you a status of where we are and how close we were to completing those things. Specifically to my contract language, when you talk about 3.4, 3.4 is an area where the board that will come on board in November, in January, needs to have a discussion with me regarding setting goals specifically related to this section so that we move forward. We're using my entry plan. I think I'm willing to submit to the will of the board to know where I was in this process prior to Hurricane Ian. I would say also that some of that continued community engagement, while virtual in the news and in videotapes to the community, may not be particularly a neighborhood dialogue. In a sense, it was the continuation of dialogue with the community. That'll be something that you and I can talk about offline once you receive the self-assessment.
I hear that, and I would be much more comfortable if that language was in the evaluation instrument itself to keep me honest as a board member evaluating you. Make sense? If it's not in there, it's got to be in there for historical purposes and just to sort of keep us in line.
This instrument was developed for now and into the future. I would be interested in a deeper discussion as the board members interact with each other and interact with each other's comments as to whether, because it was a discussion Ken and I had, whether there would be a discussion potentially related to something being, instead of just highly effective to needs improvement, could there be areas that we define and come back to you with a sample that we believe might be not applicable?
Yes.
And therefore the mathematics would change. Like, for instance, I have not visited all of our sites. I did not meet that goal. I got to a couple yesterday that I hadn't been to ever before. I did get to an elementary school, Pinewoods Elementary, and spend time with them yesterday on their first day back with just staff. So I am still continuing to do that. Technically, I have visited Fort Myers Beach via helicopter with their principal to do a walkthrough of the building. Certainly not the way I think we all envisioned me visiting Fort Myers Beach. But, I have faith in this board because you've had faith in me that you could work through these and know. I don't know that anything in my entry plan would, in my own self-assessment, would say that needs improvement or I'm sorry, there might be some things that need improvement. I don't think there's anything in my entry plan that is unsatisfactory. I've done everything I could up until the time Ian struck to be 100% behind that plan and moving it forward. So I'm comfortable either way. Ken and I did have a protracted conversation of more than 15 minutes, which is about as much time as I get with any one individual these days. We did talk about that idea of not applicable, but then, you're going to evaluate me anyway. If this relationship is not built somewhat on trust by now, then I have to make some more deposits before I make an additional withdrawal. But I have tried to be as transparent and clear with all of you as I possibly can be. And I have faith and trust in this board that you know what I've been up to and what I've been working on. And just like when we talk about third quarter grades coming to an end this week for young people, right? And we have to make a decision about grace and compassion with them regarding what they accomplished up until the point the storm impacted us. In a sense, you're like every one of our instructional people with a report card grade for Dr. Christopher Bernier, and I trust that you'll be fair and consistent.
Okay, so my legal training tells me that, assessing someone based on words on a page does not include an exercise in my mind of that's not applicable because of a hurricane. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, grace and compassion will be shown in my completion of this evaluation. I don't think there are areas that need improvement based on the fact that you have been dealt with a historical hurricane, but that's not in here. I need that to be on the paper
in order for this document to have historical context. 5 years from now, when we look back, 5 years from now, when you have a brand-new board and they look back on your evaluation. I feel very uncomfortable about that. My point has been made there. Another question is, in terms of the strategic plan goals, I'm wondering whether not just for Dr. Bernier, but for the board attorney and the internal auditor going forward, should there be a section that we use to evaluate work during an emergency situation? This is my third emergency since I've been on this board, and a different skill set is needed and not necessarily captured by these standard categories. And of course, we don't use the emergency evaluation if we're not in a time of emergency. We can go a year or two without an emergency. Apparently, emergencies are more common than I would like. But should there be an additional category that can be triggered in the event the superintendent needs to take over emergency powers? And then my final question is, does this need to be approved tonight at the action meeting in order for us to meet our goal?
Do not believe it needs to be approved at the action meeting tonight to meet our goal. I think we can get consensus from the board today without taking thumbs up, thumbs down in a workshop like this as to whether people feel comfortable proceeding with this instrument or not. Historically, we could add language to this if we wanted to, but having been an evaluatee and an evaluator for a number of years, especially during the most recent crisis prior to Ian, my evaluations reflected those individuals' ability to stand up during that virus and during that crisis. I think you have the opportunity, this instrument is open-ended enough to provide feedback as to how any superintendent would be operating during that crisis if that's the way you chose to make your comments. I think the comments version gives you that opportunity. But there's other board members with their hands up. I'm just trying to take notes.
Ms. Patrico, did you?
Oh, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Ms. Vaughn, and then Ms. Gittens, and then Ms. Morgan, please.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Bernier just said one of the things I was about to bring up, which is that's why we have comments. And although we need to, if it needs improvement, if it's a lower level, we are required to put a comment. That doesn't mean we can't put comments for the higher things. And I think that this is just fine the way it is. I think that in terms of historical perspective, if a board 5, 10, 15 years from now cares about what we did this year, they can go ahead and read the comments. And the other thing is, I guess I'm looking at this from the perspective more of a teacher. And when you grade as a teacher, and that wouldn't just be elementary, secondary, it could also be as a higher education teacher. Sometimes you have to look at extenuating circumstances. So for instance, okay, this was an emergency situation, and maybe a particular thing, if you really look exactly at every single word, would be measured during this time because of this emergency. However, to me, the most important thing is, because we're looking at it, what's the purpose of this? The purpose of it is not to nitpick every little thing. The purpose to me is, do we have an effective or highly effective superintendent? I believe in grading systems now in our schools. A child that makes a 100 in a class, an A, or a 92 in a class, an A, doesn't that, you can just nod, doesn't that compute the same way? Now, who know, it does, doesn't it? Who, Dr. Spire, somebody nod. Yes, no?
Yes.
No, I don't know what I'm talking about.
A traditional, if this is what I think you're saying, Ms. Vaughn, a traditional percentage as it's inputted then into a 4.0 model.
Right.
Would make an A and A.
100 or 92 or 91, it's an A. Okay?
So,
And
did that answer your question, Ms. Vaughn?
And that is, no, this is my comment, that I think this fits just fine. I think that really the measure of a person is how he or she responds during a crisis, and I think we can find ways to measure that, just like this. So I wouldn't change it, except, here and there, a few awkward phrases.
Thank you. I just want to make sure you got the right nods.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only thing I was trying to
Am I
figure out.
remembering that correctly? And usually I can look and see, Dr. Spiro, wake up, or I don't know. No, I expected to see nods,
Okay.
little nods, and I didn't see any, and I'm like, oh, I didn't get that right, or, anyway,
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
I'm done.
Ms. Gittens, please.
I didn't know you listened to Lil Nas, but anyway.
No, you see
I'm just
haven't you
teasing.
seen
I'm
little
teasing.
nods and little frowns and raised eyebrows? Look out there, I'm seeing them now.
That's okay.
Ms. Gittens?
All right, so I understand Ms. Patrica's comment. However, 2 weeks ago, it would have been much more difficult to complete item 1, especially for me, because I know that for example, where's the thing about community or whatever? Well, I know that the superintendent has been out doing town halls, doing all of these types of things in the community. And I was looking at 304, builds a coalition to support district needs, and versus 106, assesses and provides leadership for improving the environment, et cetera, et cetera. 2 weeks ago would have been harder. Now, this is like we went on steroids in the last 2 weeks to come up with this evaluation. And I really think it would be very difficult to adjust a generic type evaluation based on emergencies. And if anything, maybe add an addendum or something if you want to, and maybe with the new board coming in, you can discuss that, something that has to do with emergencies and how they're handled. But overall, we're looking at an instrument that is for the whole year for the superintendent. And actually, and I totally agree with Ms. Vaughn, that this is where comments come in. And I think that when we individually sit down to do this, that we look at the general and we also add the crisis and the emergency piece together, which is going to make this a very unique evaluation. Because everybody wants to be evaluated on everything they do, and not just, one circumstance or whatever. So I am all for leaving it as it is and just adding it in. If there's any extra stuff, put it in the comments. That's what it's for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. And Ms. Morgan, please.
And I agree. I mean, I've always used my comments to provide a context for my evaluation, so I think we do need a generic instrument, and it can be tailored as circumstances required by virtue of what we put in our comments. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Fisher, please.
Yes. And I would tend to agree with that too, because I think that, some of us may have a more global perspective as we're looking at the evaluation tool, or some of us may be more detail-oriented. I mean, that's a personality thing. And I think that for times like this, emergencies and unique situations, our comments are where we can address the current situation, but we're looking at an evaluation tool that we are planning to use now and into the future. So I would agree that we would keep it the same with minor little word changes, but not to create another whole evaluation specifically for emergency situations, since they all differ. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, please.
I agree with individual emergencies or in detail as much as that, because when we had the prior superintendent, we did not evaluate them on Hurricane Irma. We didn't, we probably had it in our detail and how it was handled or whatever for the evaluation, and as well as the pandemic. So I think we had crisis or emergencies, and we really didn't get details. Better for making a couple adjustments, as some board members have pointed out. I think that's fine. I'm not in a disagreement with that. And I think
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Dr. Savage, for putting this all together, as well as I just want to make one comment. I know Ms. Gins has said being put on steroids, which it does seem like that. However, I know, Dr. Savage, you've been working on this for some time now, so people don't think that, oh, you just did this like in a day's time. This has been something that you all have been working on, and really appreciate the work that you did put into it together to make it much easier for us to understand, and to for us to utilize the comments regarding what we believe, and so I do thank you for that. Is there any other comments and regarding this, Dr. B?
I just think there's one other aspect that we should cover, and that is the totaling. That once you get your effective total, there would be 7 of you that have a rating of me. I'd like Dr. Savage just to repeat for yourselves, this is a no change because this is actually reflected in your policy, how we would come up with the overall rating. Your overall rating will be calculated based upon the percentages Ken is showing you. But then to combine your scores to come up with an overall rating from the board, I would like Dr. Savage, if he can, to just to briefly touch on that because it's written out in your policies.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bernier. So when you get to the final page of your piece, you'll see that it's all your final evaluation numbers come through, but one of the most important aspects of this comes directly from our policy. And so when you go to policy 3, it's policy 3B. Specifically, it says, after removing the highest and lowest ratings, the remaining ratings for each category of the evaluations completed by the individual school board members shall be averaged to calculate the rating for each category for the composite board evaluation. So that's important because it's directly in policy, and what it allows to do is to remove outlier ratings. So let's say that one person said highly effective, one person said unsatisfactory, but the vast majority said effective. Then that is an attempt, and it's very common in evaluations ratings that are composite, where you're pulling from different raters with different mindsets to do that. And that's actually in your policy to do that. And so that's why, for me, I will need the time, and the sooner you get them. I can't promise I'll give you holiday candy if you do, but if you're able to get it done, then I can, on that November 1st day, I will pull all of those together, compile all those ratings, run those statistical processes over each one of them. All that will then be transmitted to the public. We'll have access, as they have in the past, to every single one of the board members' individual ratings, but also the composite, pulling all those pieces together when we combine all those ratings. So you'll have that piece, and it'll clearly identify for everyone how this is done. So it's a very transparent calculation. Is that what you're looking for, Dr. B?
Thank you, Dr. Savage. I think that's exactly what I'm looking for, but I'll even, because you have all taught me, it's important to also take it to a level that the common person who doesn't quite understand all this evaluation can understand. I'm hoping everybody has watched an Olympic figure skater. When the scores come in, they drop the high, they drop the low, and they average the remaining scores. Please do not ask me to ice skate. I am not capable. I can get back and forth on a hockey rink by crashing into the boards on the other side and then turning around. So, but in a sense, that's what Dr. Savage is describing. There would be 7 ratings, the high and the low would still be captured and put into the overall documents released to the public, but the actual final average would remove the highest and the lowest and then average the remaining scores.
Great, Ms. Gittens?
Just one quick comment on it. When we interviewed and went through the process of selecting a superintendent, and the myriad of questions that we asked, there were questions about how would you do this, or how would you act in a, a situation, or give us an example of a time that you handled a difficult time, all of those things. And when you think about it, all of those questions kind of culminated in these first 6 months. That's what I meant, steroids. Pretty much everything is checked off. Did you do this? Well, now you have. So everything is something that we used in selecting the superintendent, and he's had, under these circumstances, opportunity to show that he can do them. So.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. So, Dr. B, where do we want to go with this now?
For me, it appears from the conversation that we have an instrument that's viable. There's a couple of small corrections around multicultural community or another type of word other than context. I think there's really great feedback that from me to all of you that at some point you have to trust, and that you will look at some of those areas. My self-assessment will speak to where those things are. I will still do a 360. I'm just not sure now is the right time to do it. It might be very advantageous to do it right now. It might be more wise to do it several weeks from now. I'm still waiting for my evaluator who does that work for me. And again, that was always going to be my personal information that I was going to share with you. That was not necessarily directed at the evaluation. My self-assessment will speak to those categories where maybe all that work isn't completed yet. I'll be transparent and honest with you. And then it's your opportunity to rate based upon, 4 very basic terms. Do you think what I'm doing is highly effective, whether it needs improvement or unsatisfactory? And it's not an overall rating for each one of those areas. That overall rating will come from doing the individual scores. So I think I have what I need to make some adjustments with Ken tonight, including that idea of promotes. The question about higher education, we can come up with another terminology there that's more inclusive of what the other items that create a rating say. We can use a different verb, in other words, and we'll be happy to make those changes. Then I will work this evening and tomorrow on a self-evaluation, and tomorrow night, and I will get that to you. I will speak directly to what I think are some of the highlights and examples. I'll give you some quickly. The movement we had on Acceleration Academy. I think people I think those are something that in the midst of all of this you might have forgotten. not because you didn't mean to forget it, but because there's been other things to focus on other than the fact that we moved Acceleration Academy very quickly. What we're doing with Naviance and how we're moving forward with an opportunity there. What I've done in other particular areas to move the agenda for all of you forward. What it's like to have an enhanced leadership team. I had great leaders here already, but to bring in additional individuals who helped us focus. And I will have Mr. Wagner here tonight to be introduced. He is still currently in the field. So just really those types of reminders, those types of bullet points. I don't want to write a dissertation and have you think, oh my God, do I have to read all of this? But I do think there should be some input from me as to some highlights and then some areas where I honestly believe, and I will look out directly at my team, where I can still get better. In the midst of a crisis, everybody sees both sides of you. And they have been fantastic. And we have held each other up, and vice versa. They've held me, and I've held on to them. So it's been, if you want to galvanize a team, have a Category 4 arrive on your shores. It will either galvanize them or drive them apart. Category 5, so, okay, we're going to upgrade her, him, it.
Miles per hour.
It was pretty big. All I know is that Andrew fit inside its eye wall. That's what I know as a factoid on this storm. So I think we're in a good place, barring any objection. After I shut off my microphone, Ken and I will do the work. We'll get it out to you. And there will be additional instructions that come with it, because I know you hear it tonight and then tomorrow it's fuzzy. And then I think the most important thing is there will be technical help from my administrative assistance as well as your own, so that if you need technical assistance on how to complete it, you'll have that at your ready.
Perfect, thank you. And Dr. Savage, thank you again so much. Really appreciate you. So the next on the agenda will be the Florida Safe Schools Assessment Tool.
Yes, Madam Chair, while Chief Newland, who we have rescued from the Emergency Operations Center down on Ortiz, I did ask him if he was ready to come home. He said yes, but he still sees real great value in him still sitting there. We were solving a problem today. Many of you saw the email. Mom, who still lives out on Fort Myers Beach, wants to get to Fort Myers Beach Elementary School at Sanibel every day. Well, there's rules about leaving the island and then being able to come back. So Chief has been the one working on our behalf to create that pass for her that she'll need so she can ensure her daughter goes to school every day. It's a unique situation and new problems arise every day, but we're lucky to have a gentleman like the former Chief of Police of Cape Coral on our team as our executive director in terms of safety. We did have a shaded session regarding some of the information. This is about school safety, and Chief is ready for the public presentation of the information.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon, board members, and Superintendent Chris Benier and our board attorney, Kathy Dupree-Bruno. For the record, I am Dave Newland, Executive Director of Safety, Security, and Emergency Management. Again, we are here today to go over the results of our Florida Safe Schools Assessment Tool, which I will refer to as FSAT for the rest of this presentation. Again, this is for our district safety and security, and this is completed by all of our schools and intended to identify any threats, vulnerabilities, and appropriate safety controls for our schools. As we move forward, I want to also start off by giving a little bit of history about FSAT for our viewers as well and our public, where this started. So FSAT has been around since June of 2014 through the Florida Department of Education. Some of the requirements: districts are and must ensure school security and risk assessments are submitted in FSAT by October 1st. We have fulfilled that requirement. Each school district must report to the department by October 15th that all public schools within the school district have completed their school security and risk assessment. We have completed that requirement. And today, each school safety specialist must report school security and risk assessment findings and school board action to the Office of Safe Schools within 30 days after the district school board meets publicly on the findings and makes a recommendation, but no later than November 1st, and that's where we are at today. After today, and after it's submitted, from that point forward, by December 1st of each year, the department shall report to the governor, the President of the Senate, and Speaker of the House of Representatives on the status of FSAT implementation across all school districts and schools in Florida. As a district, we consider using compliance requirements as well as best practices as well in safety and security, whether that be in the use of new or improved technology, hardware, building design, training, or other areas, especially those related to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission recommendations. Our school safety and security involves everyone in our district, from staff to students, and must be approached from a wide array of functions and services that we provide. So I'm going to go over some of our best practices and also our project status on some of these things as discussed before. As always, we always look at our security cameras, how we can improve. That's ongoing each year. As we look at areas that may be vulnerabilities, as I mentioned, that's part of what we identify, not only in FSAT, but again, throughout the year. Our access control is mostly going to be completed this year, except for some of our ancillary sites. Our Bosch security system will be completed this year as well. Our bidirectional antenna system project, which basically gives connectivity to radio systems, is complete. Again, when I talk about secure vestibules, and we've heard that terminology brought up at different times, I want to change that methodology for a minute by saying that we, more than anything else, we look at each school site, we do an assessment based on school design as adding layers of security. And that's what that should really mean. Because again, we look at each school based on how it's designed, and based on how that looks, what is applied best for security for a measure of layer of security. We're improving our intercom upgrades. That's consistent as well. We're always looking at intercom connectivity and improving intercoms. Last year, as you remember, through Alyssa's Law, we introduced Centegix, which is our panic alarm system. That was put into our school system, our district, every building in Lee County. Every employee has access, has a card for that Centegix system. As we go through and look at our vulnerabilities, areas that we can improve on, we're always looking, and as well, part of the FSAT, what we'll say too, is getting input from our schools, what they are seeing as far as possible weak points as well. Also, with our zone managers, working with our local law enforcement partners, what we feel could be improved on, things we can add to. So with those, some of the things we're going to work always to improve on, we're always looking at areas of our possible fencing that we can add to additional fencing, possibly at some of our school sites. A lot of times it's more of strengthening or anchoring areas that are identified on a school site that could be improved on over time. That's why you have to constantly look at these areas year round. Based on design, constructing enclosed walkways to separate some of the front parking lots as well. Again, adding to our security cameras. And again, one of the things too we're really pushing on since last year and into this year is our high liability training. And that includes our active assailant training, threat assessment training, reunification, any legal issues, tactical communications, any type of procedural training that's on a current practice. One of the things we really want to make sure of that it's consistent, anything that we do, so as we can make it part of our normal procedures that, especially things like a high liability issue, again, like I mentioned before, active assailant training, reunification, are very things that are highlighted that we are focusing on this year as well. And those are some of the highlights. Again, like I said before, they're based on FSAT results, the things that we get back along with the things we've identified throughout the year. And those are in our report, and then I'll stand by for any questions.
Dr. B, okay. Are there any questions pertaining to anything that Mr. Newland has just mentioned or discussed? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, thank you. You just mentioned training. We're a district where we're constantly bringing in new people, and the only concern that I have is that sometimes if somebody is for whatever reason absent from initial training, or is a new hire a month into the school year, that those people might slip through the cracks. And everybody needs to know this, and especially office main office personnel. So what do we do to safeguard this situation if we have people that miss the training?
Part of what we do is we have our main training days. For example, I'll give you an example. Safety security specialists, for example.
Okay.
There's a set training for them every August and June. So obviously we look at that, those get all in June. We hire some during the summertime and they get trained in August. Then what happens when that person gets hired in September? So we came up with a training program that they would have to fulfill during those 2 time frames when they first get hired. And that was one of the things we identified in this last year. But they would still be required to go to the June training as well. That's more extensive. But we've identified those points where we don't, like you mentioned, when they fall in the cracks sometimes. So we're going to offer those trainings as well in between. We have the main things we schedule, but also offer as many as we can in between, or something if we can't do it in person, we'll do it virtually.
Oh, and actually what I was also referring to are the everyday school personnel, from office personnel, cafeteria workers, teachers, administrators, and all of that, because they too receive, is it at the beginning of the preschool week, or that they have refreshers on, what do we do if? Do we do that?
Well, that's each school goes over those emergency operational plans with their staff as well.
Right.
As you know,
Right.
we do the safety assessment drills and emergency drills every month as well. So again, they get exposed. That's why we do this every month as well. It's a requirement, but they get exposed to that. We're always going through their emergency operational plan. I also can tell you that as much as we can working with staff, try to make ourselves available as much as possible. Whenever, if somebody contacts me from a school and say, hey, can you come train some of my staff on tactical communications, we make that schedule, we respond to the school and we train them. So
Yeah, because, and I ask this because in the past, we've had, situations where maybe a student brings a weapon to school, whether it was accidental or whether it was, I'm going to take care of that bully today. And I believe this has been taken care of, but in the past, we've had some incidents where people, let's say office personnel at a school, came to speak up about a certain person and said, frankly, I didn't know what to do. Or it makes me really nervous whenever I hear a teacher, a guest teacher, somebody, especially the office personnel, to say, I didn't know what to do, and so that's my biggest concern, the communication, and actually including the kids too, because some of our kids will, if they see something, they will say something, but we've had incidents where kids say, yeah, I saw him with that knife on the bus after the fact. So I think that's one of the areas that we really have to never let down on. So do we have any things that we're doing to make sure that there's like this constant reminding, retraining, and
well, I would agree with you, obviously. We can't let that go, and I think it's very important. I think one of the things that I've seen that we have a great success in is our partnership, for example, with all of our law enforcement agencies. Mm-hmm. So when we had those discussions with those agencies and with the school resource officers assigned to those schools to work with the staff and go over scenarios, and we've encouraged staff alone, talk about what could happen at your school and talk about what would each person do. How would you respond? How would you react? How should you react? And I think the biggest thing is we always say, never get complacent.
right.
You always want to talk about, you always want to be looking about training, how we can improve. I can't tell you there's probably never enough, but we have to keep moving forward, keep training, keep talking about it. encouraging staff to go through it in their own, within their school. If something was to happen, talk about what each person with that and with our law enforcement partners as well, helping to encourage that, talk about, answer questions with staff while they're at the school, so the school knows as well, how are they going to respond? So we should have to keep working on this, moving forward, offer training. Again, it's collaborative. It's everybody taking part, taking ownership, discussing it, communicating, and just keep training, how we can improve.
I appreciate that, and the only thing I have to reiterate is sometimes we have short memories on things, and we know, oh my God, it has to become almost a second nature, which sounds awful that we have to even say that in a school district. But when you're in a crisis situation, it's like, oh my God, I know we're supposed to do something. What? And
Absolutely.
and so that's why I'm saying, if we can make sure that everybody at, all the SROs and the people within the schools, maybe even at faculty meetings or, send out, here's a little reminder, here's a little tidbit on such and such. Just.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. It's definitely repetitive. Yes, Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Gittens.
Thank you.
Please.
So piggybacking on what Mrs. Vaughn had to say, I'm going to ask this question, and I've asked it before, regarding the Florida Safe Schools assessment tool and the best practices. Is there any section of that covers the people part? One thing would be, we have invested in prevention programs that we use in our schools, such as restorative practices and, what is it again? The PBS, the positive behavior support. So I think, prevention is important, and that involves the students and the teachers. And then regarding the training, is there any, and I think Ms. Vaughn alluded to this, but is there any ongoing reinforcement? Because twice a year, you get some of the people, you don't get some get it, some don't. So I think that there needs to be, if we are using these prevention programs in our schools, are the SROs involved in those? And so what's that part of it? How are we dealing with that? Because the bottom line is that when there is an emergency or a crisis, people are the ones who have to respond, and they have to be prepared. However, I believe, after my time in education, that a lot of the emergencies can be prevented. And so I'm just wondering how much effort is put into that part of it to include that in our, our intercommon grades and our strategics and our access points and all that, because it looks like we're prepared for the emergency, but we don't necessarily have to have it. So I would like to see a little more emphasis on the other side.
Well, I'll let Chief Newland explain, but I think that's another level of integration that I've found within our school district that needs to be highlighted. Safety from Mr. Newland's point of view is not just a safety issue. It is about training, it's about education, but it is also about prevention. And we have really amazing people in student services that integrate with Chief's department to not only be there for the response to an emergency or to a crisis after it's happened, but to be part of that preventative aspect of helping our staff and our threat assessment teams and other people help make some decisions about what's the best inroads, what's the best opportunity for a young person who may be approaching a crisis level. How do we intervene with those individuals? And if that is a desire of the board, I'll just look back to Dr. Savage, who will write this down on another workshop page, and I'll let Chief respond as well about that integration. But I think that's another opportunity for us to explore, so you can see how departments are interconnected with each other in order to raise some of those issues.
And then I'll just respond to that and say, so then, is any of that effort, our our crisis response teams, our threat assessment teams, our mental health counselors, school counselors, et cetera. Is any of that indicated in our annual report about Florida?
The
Safe
EFSAT
Schools?
report, again, is something separate from what you're asking me about, like the superintendent had mentioned. I can tell you that we talk about threat assessments, for example, you talk about de-escalation techniques. These are all things that not only do we talk about, but law enforcement also talks about. The conversations that we have, in other words, in safety and security, doesn't just involve safety and security. It involves our mental health counselors. It involves social services to work together to talk about in a case-to-case basis. So when we have these discussions, it's not just safety and security, it's not just law enforcement. It's all of us talking about this. We all work on these things together. And basically, because we want to be, again, the whole idea is preventative. It is to be proactive. It is to identify to what could possibly pose a threat and how can we prevent that from happening again. But it is, again, it's something else that, as mentioned before, it's kind of like the same as training. It's constant. And it's got to be constant, and it has to be continuous. So I can tell you, for example, having social services, social workers assigned, working with law enforcement, working with the schools is all part of that. It's a partnership. And as we move forward, those are things I think we can always continue to work on and improve on. But we still have to have these measures that are put in place, as you mentioned before. We have these things ready to go because a lot of things are required by statute. They are required by Marjorie Stoneman's, safe schools, that we have to have these things in place. But then we have our best practices as well. And that's where we go beyond that into also what you're talking about.
Okay, and so then it is indicated in the report, or did I understand you to say no?
No, it's not. It's not in the report.
Okay.
Yeah, that was what I was going to come back and ask Chief to answer directly. It was a pretty direct question. The short answer in this particular report, that type of information is not included. The state is not asking that of our safety department. However, there are other reports which we must respond to outside of the safety and outside of this particular report where those type of preventative actions have to be documented. But this particular report, the answer to your question, Board Member Fisher, is no.
Thank you.
I have Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Giovanelli.
Forgot to
Gittens.
turn on. Okay, thank you. Hi, Chief.
Hello.
So I know you're looking forward to a nice rest, but I just want to say thank you so much for being our eyes and ears at the heart of the matter.
Thank you.
So two questions. One, when I was a teacher every year with that wonderful training that we had to do, one of the things is we would have to go out in the back and with the firemen put out a fire in a bucket. Is there something like that that can be a part of, and teachers are going to hate me for saying this, but a part of that training, that preschool training and update, and so that we know that everyone has done it? I mean, it's almost like a certification, or you get something.
There are things that you can do, I think we do on a smaller scale, but I think there are things too that we try to apply now on a larger scale. So earlier this year, we did a tabletop on active assailant. We went over a scenario. We used one of our actual schools. We had every entity from public safety present at this training, all our local organizations, city personnel, to go through that whole scenario and talk about what does that look like? How do we respond to these type of, going through this again, that's all about training, and we discuss it and going through it. So we try to apply, there's things you can do on a smaller scale to answer your question, but things that we can also apply on a larger scale. It's more practical.
And I agree with you. However, that's kind of like the people that are going to do it. The people that with the turnover that we have, the influx of new people consistently, we get a brand new teacher from Poughkeepsie and they never did that up there. And so until it's time again for that teacher to get into that training, they miss it. And in that time, anything can happen. So, when I say training, I'm not talking about the higher level. How do we filter it down? just not that high level of intensity training, but just something almost like, like the fire thing or fire drills or whatever that people need to know, that the staff needs to know. We've got a lot of new teachers, a lot of substitutes, a lot of, whatever, and that's another question. Are the substitutes trained in any way?
So when you get hired and then you go through every year annually, we're all required to go through our annual training, or the videos that we have to go through and watch, our training videos. Those cover certain areas, even active shooter, bullying, all kind of things, different topics. So that is done annually as well. But to answer your question, so everybody does go through those, but then we try to add to that. Those are the things, those are the mandatories. We want to go over other things that we can add to that in more detail. So those are covered, but if we can increase that, which we're doing now, add in a larger scale, that when a person can walk through those steps in more of a practical level versus watching something, listening to something.
Right.
Sometimes those things can apply, those are applied better. They can be more, or could possibly be retained better, and you can apply them because you're actually using it on a location you can relate to.
And when you're doing it, and I understand that, the question, and I'm not asking for a response to this now, but how do we capture the new staff, the new teachers that come in the interim? And my last question is, will there be any documentation of the FSSAT added to the board docs, or is that something that you can't put it out there?
That is something we cannot put out there, yes.
Is there any type of condensed whatever that can be put out so that if people want to know not the details as to what we're doing, but overall we're covering this and overall we're covering this?
Well, I'll let our board attorney speak for that.
So, Ms. Gittens, we have to be extremely careful with security information. There's statutory protections that it's not a public record. So the only thing I would say is to really be extremely careful, because there's a reason why those types of information are protected, so that people who want to use it for the wrong purpose do not get them and use it for the wrong purpose. So I would caution strongly against that.
Right. No, and I understand. The information that you gave today in the public is then the extent, and we would just tell people, just watch the video. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, please.
Okay, so thank you for your update today. Mine actually is a little bit piggybacking off of something Ms. Fisher was saying, and I don't know that we do this, but, we've had our own incidents. Do we take the scenarios and kind of look at what we did wrong and learn from that and train on that and compile that data? I think that we can learn from our own experiences how we can do, we always can do better. And I think taking our mishaps and mistakes and learning from that, and then helping principals navigate through that, because I've seen some things that I think could have been navigated better, right? And I'm afraid that it stops right there. We don't learn from that and train on that. I would love to see the data that actually, after the incident, then reevaluate it, because we have a threat. Usually there's a threat assessment at some point that we missed something. So how do we make that better the next time? So I would like to see the data, and then the group get back together and figure out what they went wrong, and then take that information to the principals and to the staff for training. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And because there's so much that we can learn from our own experiences that and make some changes. But part of it's just understanding and navigate, and understanding what happened and how they could have navigated it better. Because sometimes they couldn't have. Their situation was limited and restricted, and so they acted as swiftly as they could, and they did what they could do. But I think there's been circumstances where staff could have reacted and didn't. So that's my concern, is that we really need to look at everything and learn from our own mistakes. And do we do that? I guess that's the question.
To give you, sorry, go ahead.
I think we're going to say the same thing. You go first, and I'll follow up.
To give you an example, we just had a couple incidents that happened recently that, as we all know, one was at South Fort Myers High School. We did have an after-action debriefing with all those involved. We had law enforcement respond. We had a long, good discussion with all of our law enforcement partners, all of our staff, went over what happened, how it happened, how did we hear it, what were the chain of events that took place, and went over it step by step and talked about some things that we could improve on. And again, I think it's valuable training, because these are things, it's not, like you said, it's not to pick on anybody, but it's really to learn from it and how we can improve, move forward so it doesn't happen again. So it was very valuable when we had this discussion, and that was something we were getting ready, I think, to speak to the board about, but some other things that have happened recently. But I think, yes, to answer your question, it's very valuable. And yes, we do that. We have an incident like that. Yes, I support it 100%. We learn a lot from these things.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really what I wanted, just awareness, that, we're all always learning, right? So
Yes.
we're in that business. So I think it's really important that we grow with it, with our experiences, whether good or bad, because it's always a learning experience. And that's really what's important, because once you learn from it, you won't make typically you won't make the mistake again. It's just like, I tell the joke, my mother said, Melissa, don't put a knife into the toaster. Well, guess what? I did. I'm like, why? I was a why baby, and I had to try it for myself. So kids do that too. So I mean, but I learned. I didn't do it again. I learned. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's how you got your curly hair.
I guess I have one. First of all, thank you for the session that we had and all the information that you had provided to us. But going a little bit with what the other ladies had been speaking about, what constitutes an incident? And so when we're reevaluating or recapping, what has transpired, good, bad, indifference, and how do we move forward and how do we improve, or we did a great job. What is that? What is an incident?
Incidents can take a variety, if I may, incidents can take a variety of forms. They can be as significant as what happened to South Fort Myers, where we had a hoax 911 call that scrambled an entire sheriff's department to the doors looking for an active shooter. A school goes into a lockdown, thinking potentially, SROs included, that there might be someone on campus. That's about as real as it gets without being real. So that's one level of incident. And we certainly are, one of the first things some of us connected on was something called after action review. It's a SEAL team word, Special Forces term. Before people go take a shower and clean up from a mission, they sit and they do an after action review. They do it while it's fresh. They do it while it's hot. They do it while they still can recall all the details. Then they have more follow-up meetings from them. So that's one level of incident. Another incident occurred at Lambs, and we still owe you debriefs on both of those incidents and what we've learned and how we're re-instructing principals better. Some incidents occur when you have a drill and a substitute, to use Ms. Gitten's example, doesn't know what to do. The kids make the information known to the substitute as what they're expected to do. And that provides additional information back to an administrative team who's paying attention to how people work through emergency drills. So incidents can take many different forms. They don't have to be as impactful as South Fort Myers High School, but that was a very real situation until it wasn't real. And I think the other piece is it wasn't just the school district that learned lessons. All the agencies that were gathered at that table walked away with ways that they could improve response time, and then, dare I say, it seems to come up every time we talk about anything, communication. How do we communicate better in the instant to know what everyone's up to and to ensure that, certain things are directed in a manner that allow for the best response of personnel at the quickest amount of time. So incidents can be everything from a student not participating in a drill and sitting down with a student and explaining how important it is that they participate in a drill, because this could be real. It could escalate all the way to what occurred at South Fort Myers High School, which was everything but what they were looking for, and we're blessed. I mean, I don't know that we're blessed to have it happen, but it did provide us, and again, not from a gotcha perspective, it got us some information about ways that we could continue to improve our processes.
Okay, so in saying that, so that would also then include anytime we were to Baker Act a child, that we go back in and make sure that we did that correctly and everything is in the up and up on that as well, correct?
Certainly the internal processes as the school would be looked at, and then we've had some incidents with Baker acting where we have responded to the Sheriff's Department to ask them to change some of their protocols, and they have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, Ms. Giovanelli?
Restorative practices. How is that training being implemented in schools? Because that was my fear when I learned about that many years ago now, that how it's implemented and one's understanding can be different, and therefore it's not everybody's practices are the same. So how do we make sure that everybody's on the same page with that aspect, the restorative practice aspect?
Ms. Giovanelli, if I may, I really believe restorative practices are of value, but I think you raise an excellent point. If you're not careful, they can send a wrong message. I don't know, and I will let Chief proceed, but I don't know Chief is the best expert on restorative practices as it applies to our code of conduct. That question, though, does deserve to be answered, so I will get that information for you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions pertaining to this topic? If none, thank you so very much again for being here and everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And Dr. B, the next one is the Office of Legal Services update, and that is going to be Mr. Bruno. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize Ms. Patrica.
That's okay. It's about the upcoming agenda items. I'm not sure there's going to be any appetite for this, but I would ask the board to please postpone this discussion. I had a conversation with Conflict Counsel Attorney Quick today, and he believes that it is not appropriate for me to engage in today's discussion, and I would ask that out of fairness, all board members be allowed to be present for the discussion and to be able to fully participate in the discussion. It's my understanding that there's some frustration regarding the fact that an investigative report has not yet been provided to the board. It's my understanding that the investigator was waiting on agreement by the parties involved to agree to mediation. I provided that agreement mid-July. Attorney Quick indicated to me that he received approval from Attorney Bruno after hours for a conditional willingness to participate in mediation. I understand that we've got to conduct an interim review. If that really is the issue, we already have ways that we have done that in the past. And again, I would ask that the board please consider postponing the discussion.
Okay, this discussion for what we're speaking on this really has nothing to do with, this is just what was promised to us a year ago that is owed to the board. So a year ago, we sat here and said that this would come before us, the Office of Legal Services, and what they have done thus far. Has nothing to do with individual people. It is about the legal services, period. So I don't know how.
I understand, but if I may just say that my ability to participate in that conversation is non-existent right now. I can't discuss this. I'm not in a position where I'm able to discuss the information that was placed in this presentation. I can't provide appropriate feedback to members of my team or to members of the legal team. I'm not in a position where I can do that.
Okay, and so Mr. Pre-Bruno, I'm sorry, I'm like caught in the middle right here because I don't know if I need to take a break to call conflict counsel on this to see how we move forward, because from my understanding, this is not about an individual. This is about the legal services and what you all have done, what the legal services department has done thus far throughout the year. So I'm not sure in how to proceed on this, and I don't even know if you can give me that information.
What I can say, Madam Chair, is that this presentation is about the legal department, its operations, its functions, the work that it does, what services are being provided, and how we work with staff. That's the extent of this particular presentation. If there are questions and you would like further guidance, I'm not sure how, I did not speak to conflict counsel, so this is a surprise to me. So I'm not sure how that impacts this particular presentation, because again, this is solely on the legal department itself. My advice to you, Madam Chair, is if you have concerns to call conflict counsel to get advice.
Okay, so,
And may I just say that if the board is not willing to postpone this discussion, I will step out of the room, listen to it on YouTube, and then rejoin the meeting when the discussion is completed.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, and I think that when there is a conflict for an individual board member, that's exactly what you can do, is recuse yourself for the period of the presentation.
Ms. Gittens, and then Ms. Morgan, please.
Yes, I reviewed the presentation, at least the first one, and it is an overall explanation of what we've been saying has not been presented before. So I think that it's generic, this is what this department does, and what they intend to do. And I don't see any conflict in that. I can understand with the evaluation, and let me ask this question, the attorney's evaluation instrument is a presentation of an instrument. It is not an evaluation of the attorney. It is saying, like we did with the superintendent, whoever sits in that position, this is the instrument that will be used for their evaluation. So since it's not a personal thing, I don't see that we need to, postpone it or whatever, and I agree with Ms. Fisher. If someone feels personally that it is an obstacle for them, then personally they have the choice to remove themselves. Thank you.
So I had a conversation with Mr. Quick back in September when I learned that the investigation was completed, but the report had not been filed. So that's my bad, and I apologize to the board for saying the report was completed. It was not. The investigation was completed. A draft was created. But I made it clear to the conflict counsel that I'm very uncomfortable because I have been both critical of the legal department's work, the leadership of the legal department, and I have also offered on numerous occasions advice on how I think operations, management, et cetera, can be improved. Now, the risk I run is that I become another object of a whistleblower complaint because I don't know what the outcome is of the complaint that was lodged. I don't know. I feel constrained in my work as a board member. Now, I'm going to sit here and I'll participate, but to me, there's a risk that I will say something that someone will find will term offensive or inappropriate or whatever, and then I'm in a situation. So I just want to be clear that I have personal reservations about dealing with the board attorney as a result of the whistleblower complaint. And I made that clear to conflict counsel.
Okay, so in saying that, if it's okay with everyone that we take a 5-minute break so I can give them a call to make sure that everyone is, that this is not an issue for anyone here sitting here. Ms. Vaughn.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Quick is going to be available for your call, but I certainly, instead of getting it second or third hand, if he has something to say on this, I'd like to hear it. As far as the rest of the discussion is concerned, this board is not new to conflict. And there have been a few times, I know, when we've taken votes as a board where individual board members might say, I'm going to recuse myself from this. Now, there's a difference from recusing yourself from a vote and not being able to participate, but I would really want to hear what Mr. Quick has to say, and I don't know why all of us would need to put this off, something we've been asking for, something that's overdue, because we have one person that's, you know, if it were, well, I'm not going to say if it were, yeah, I'm going to say, if it were me, I would just, you know, go in another room, watch it on YouTube, or just sit here and shut my mouth. I just don't see the point unless the conflict attorney says, no, you shouldn't do this today, in which case I would think that he would have contacted you, Ms. Jordan, as the chair. So that's what I have to say.
And I want to apologize because I did speak with him the other day after we received the email, and I was looking at this as a different perspective, not as individual, as what we had required the legal department to bring forward to us as a board, is what I had looked at this as being. So if, go ahead, Ms. Patrica, and then.
I'm sorry, you spoke with him? You're the chair. What did he say?
I did not speak with him regarding this particular item.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I spoke on, was anything completed? Because we did not have anything before us. That's what my phone call was to him.
Okay.
Not pertaining to this at all.
I misunderstood.
Yeah. Ms. Patrica?
So I understand that we've been waiting for this for quite some time. Some of the comments that I have regarding this presentation are critical. I am not in a position where I can make critical comments regarding anyone in the legal department right now because of the situation I specifically am in. I asked the board if they would be willing to put this off to accommodate the situation that I've been placed in. You're clearly not willing to accommodate me as a member of your team, so I will step out. That's fine. If you don't feel that my input and feedback on this issue is an essential component of the discussion, that I said I would step out. I didn't say there was an issue for anyone else at the table. I said there's an issue for me. I cannot participate in today's discussion. I'll provide you a white paper when this matter has been concluded, and I will give you my feedback then.
So my issue is there anyone else on here who feels that there's a conflict in having this going forward with this conversation? If so, I don't know if we can call him right now from the dais and ask him. Ms. Giovanelli and then Ms. Gittens, because we need to move forward.
Well, okay, so we're just discussing the document. I just want to get clarity on this. So we're just discussing the a board attorney interim evaluation.
No. We are discussing, it's the Office of Legal Services. A year ago, this next item on the agenda, a year ago, we had stated that at 1 year from such date, they were to come back, legal services were to come back. It doesn't matter who was in charge of legal services, period, were to come back and give us an update of, from 0 to now, of what has transpired, where are we at, has nothing to do with any attorneys at all. It is about the district and about where we're at as far as our legal services are concerned. It's not about that we have to remove the individuals out of this. It has nothing to do with individuals.
Okay, so my concern is putting this off any longer puts us in a liability situation as well. So understanding now, it's the whole presentation, I don't know that we can wait any longer. Thank you.
Ms. Gittens.
Okay, several times on this board, there have been issues between board members and complaints made and all of that, and everybody showed up to the meeting to discuss the work of the board. This is, the Legal Services Department is the work of the board. We have to make sure that that is in place, and we need to know what that means. If we, looking at the PowerPoint, just delete the first PowerPoint with anybody's name on it, and just go through the rest of it. And it talks about what that department has, will, and can do, their bandwidth. We have sat up here and there have been complaints about this one and that one and the other one, but we continued on with the work of the board. And we cannot continue because of issues or personal things that are going on. I mean, when there were complaints against me, I never missed a meeting because of it. I didn't stay home because someone accused me of doing something I didn't do. I just, dealt with it as it came. This is the work of the board. It's what we are here for, to make sure that this board runs and this district runs in a smooth way, especially now, considering what we've just gone through. Legal needs to be intact. We have no idea what some people may come back and say to us because of Ian. It's just open season. So we need to make sure we have our legal services intact. It doesn't matter if, Jim Jones is in charge of it. That's not the issue. Don't show the first slide with the names on it. Just go through the process and let's talk about what this department is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And listening to what everyone has, the majority has stated, I think we do need to move forward with this in knowing that this is not about individuals, period. It is about what is our legal department doing? What has it done since we first inception of this, saying we wanted them to come back a year from XYZ to share with us what has transpired, and especially now with everything that has been going on, and we definitely need to be updated on all of that. So I think that when we're speaking, we need to definitely keep that in mind, that we are speaking on a department. We are speaking about what has transpired, and not as individual personalities, people. And I think we're grown, we're all adults, and I think that we can definitely do that. And also with comments that are made or feedback that is given that is not taken by anyone as being a negative or that it's an attack. So it has to work both ways as well. So I just wanted to state that, because people that are sitting up here need to make sure that they are able to give that feedback on how they feel as well, without people feeling that their feelings are getting hurt or it is a personal attack. It is about the discussion is going to stay based on the department. So seeing that, we'll go ahead.
Based on exactly what you just said, I'm going to excuse myself from the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Pre-Bruno, will you go ahead and call
Yes.
whomever's up to
Madam
do the
Chair?
presentation?
If I may ask for like a 3-minute recess, please? Just even a 2-minute recess.
I like 5.
Whatever you can give me, I just need to,
Okay.
thank you.
5 minutes, everybody comes back here.
Thank you.
The time is 2:54, and we will continue on our workshop. The next item on the agenda is Office of Legal Services. And I just want to reiterate what I had said earlier, that we make sure that feedback is feedback, and please do not take anything personal, because we are here to have conversation and to learn. So with that, Mr. Bruno, will you please begin, or whoever, introduce everybody, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Is the mic on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. With me today is Attorney Corey Huffman. We have Benarita Brophy, our paralegal, as well as Attorney Shayna Zupke. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Bernier, district staff, and other stakeholders present here today. The Office of Legal Services is here to offer an update to the board on the overall legal services provided to the district as a follow-up to our original presentation in August of 2021. This presentation was supposed to occur on September 28th, but was postponed due to Hurricane Ian. We understand that we still have many who continue to be affected by the aftermath of Ian, members of our own district family, our students, and our community. We also recognize the important role that our office plays in helping this district move forward during this recovery period. We are part of the team and thank this board for this opportunity to serve and provide legal support to the superintendent and staff during this time. Hopefully, this presentation will enlighten everyone as to the role and services being provided by legal, and that we will continue to provide as we reopen schools and return to normal district operations. We have heard the board's comments and questions on the status of the legal department as it stands today, and we are here to provide feedback on the integral work that legal provides to the district on a day-to-day basis, which is in furtherance of the district's mission and vision. We, Legal Services, are part of the district's team. When legal does well, this district, which includes this board, succeeds. When we flourish as a district, our students achieve and our community thrives. Our agenda includes the impact of legal services and measuring success, a review and update on the 3 goals from the Board Attorney's evaluation in April 2022, which I will present on. Attorneys Corey Huffman and Shayna Zupke will provide an overview of the legal services provided and share with you district staff feedback on legal. We also look forward to the board's discussion as to this year's goals and expectations. Last year, legal presented to the board a suggested new scheme for the restructuring of the office in an effort to provide a more well-rounded approach to legal representation. Our goal was to create a legal team that was cost-effective for the district and met the needs of the board, superintendent, and staff with less reliance on outside counsel for routine services, incorporating a collaborative approach to the practices which encompasses the board, the administration, and essentially the entire district, allowed for better processes to be created, and developed a robust preventative law risk loss mitigation initiative, allowing us to be more on the offense than being on the defense. Even in the practice of law, it is true that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as it helps with cost containment, liability mitigation, public trust, and other considerations. Since our presentation in August 2021, we have further refined the structure of our department to enhance these ideas and our ability to cohesively and seamlessly represent our clients from a district-wide perspective with customer service as one of its hallmarks. During the school board attorney's evaluation in April 2022, 3 areas were identified as areas to be addressed: policies, the organization of the legal department, and budget. Over the last year, Legal Services helped draft 20 policies to assist the board in its ongoing governance role. In addition, we are leading in the implementation of the Neola conversion with the assistance of the district's Neola project team and staff, which will result in over 600+ policies for the board's consideration and adoption, as well as the accompanying processes. The current organizational chart for legal services brings all of the councils for the district under one umbrella to guarantee the collaboration of the services provided by this office in a unified, comprehensive, brain trust approach that will contribute to a collective analysis and assessment of the legal needs of the organization, thereby strengthening the guidance rendered. The centralized approach allows for the legal team to serve the district as a whole while integrating themselves in their respective divisions and departments to ensure the board's and staff's needs are met at the most granular level while assessing the impact on the entire system. This approach helps with risk assessment, which empowers the practice of preventative law. Attorney Corey Huffman has recently joined our team as the Assistant School Board Attorney for Academic Services and is located within Academic Services to be better attuned to the legal needs of the respective departments and addresses school site-related questions and issues. Attorney Shana Zupke is located in Operations, where she concentrates on the needs of business services and operations, including reviewing contracts, advising on projects, procurement, and other legal issues that come to fruition. Benedita Brophy and Jessica Melendez provide support services to assist in the day-to-day task for the department. As a school board attorney, I advise the board, handle policies and governance issues, and handle high-level issues across the divisions. We are currently advertising for and seeking to fill a vacant position for the HR Employment and Labor Law Attorney, Equity Coordinator, and another paralegal. For fiscal year 21-22, we reached our goal and saved the district just over $173,000 compared to the previous legal budget when we had two different legal departments in FY21 and FY20. The current legal budget, which is under one umbrella, for 22-23 is $1.3 million, which is higher than the 21-22 budget due to the formal addition of the equity coordinator, the increase in the cost of benefits, a budget line item for external investigations, and Neola services, which will be temporary for just 2 years. At this time, attorneys Huffman and Zupke will share information on the types of legal services we provide to the district, as well as feedback we have received from staff on those services.
The school district is a large organization with complicated needs that must be addressed on a day-to-day basis. The goal of the Office of Legal Services is the same as the district's, to ensure that the Lee County School District is a world-class school system, and to assist the district in its mission to ensure that each student in Lee County achieves their highest potential. Legal Services achieves these goals by providing staff support to district and school personnel, by assisting and providing advice at employee discipline meetings, school discipline, and exceptional student education meetings. Legal Services also provides legal representation to the board and district personnel at board meetings, student expulsions, employee termination, administrative hearings for due process, and managing our civil litigation actions. Finally, we strive to achieve success in assisting the district with risk loss mitigation by providing preventative legal advice. For example, we advised on loss mitigation measures regarding an alleged sunshine matter that avoided legal action relating to a particular set of textbook adoptions.
The Office of Legal Services handles hot button issues, urgent matters, and puts out fires.
Sorry, Shana, could you bring that to you, please?
Sorry. Office of Legal Services handles hot button issues, urgent matters, and puts out fires regularly. Processing voluminous amount of emails and correspondence daily, in addition to the day-to-day urgent issues that arise. We also provide the core standard legal services, including processing more than 400 contracts and legal documents, processing 114 garnishment actions, responding to 138 subpoenas, accepting service and overseeing over 40 civil litigation matters, attending over 40 public records meetings for legal guidance and compliance, attending 108 employee discipline-related conferences, and 42 ADA Review Determination Committee meetings. We also attended over 60 disciplinary appeal review hearings for students, also known as Derrick hearings, 9 student expulsions, and other required DOA hearings.
Legal Services further appeared at over 70 board meetings and provided 20 end-service trainings for staff on the implementations of House Bills 1557 and 7, Chapter 39 mandatory reporting, Parents' Bill of Rights, redistricting, specific 2022 legislative updates for each division and certain departments. Legal Services presented an extensive retreat for the board, which constituted more than 25 hours of training, as well as a board presentation on elected versus appointed superintendent, which is currently being utilized by board members in their community outreach. Additionally, we closely monitor regulations, developments, and the legal landscape to advise the board and administration in navigating complicated, sensitive matters to ensure ongoing legal compliance. We provide regular legislative and case law updates for ongoing edification. We work with the state and the board auditor, closely work on policies, and yearly train board advisory committees and attend their quarterly meetings. Per policy, Legal Services is a member of the audit committee and attend those meetings as well. Those are just some of the samplings of the day-to-day work that happens in the Legal Services Department. As you can imagine, no day is ever the same for us.
To determine the needs of staff and receive feedback on how well Legal Services is meeting those needs, a survey was conducted via SurveyMonkey. The survey was sent to the board, superintendent, deputy superintendent, all of the chiefs, all of the executive directors and directors, all principals, and other personnel that regularly work with and require legal services within the district. All responses were submitted anonymously. The questions were based on samples of attorney and law firm client feedback questionnaires. The purpose of the survey was to get a pulse on how well staff perceive that legal is meeting their needs by measuring customer service points, like the timeliness in providing requested services, the sufficiency of the legal services provided, how well our office understood their needs and met their needs, and to get an overall sense of the satisfaction of the legal services being provided.
A 5% to 30% response rate of a survey will result in enough data to ascertain customer feedback. According to Genro, a marketing agency that specializes in surveys, a study with more than 20% response rate has a good survey response, indicating a statistically valid response. Our survey was sent to 189 individuals and 75 responded. This equates to a 40% response rate and a 95% confidence level rating. This means that the survey provides a good, statistically valid, reliable depiction of the staff's opinion on the services legal provides and whether we are meeting their needs.
The survey consisted of 10 questions, 8 of which requested a satisfaction level and the ability to provide comments on those specific questions, while 2 questions specifically requested comments on overall satisfaction and comments of areas of improvement. Nearly 80% of responses were marked as satisfied or very satisfied, while an average of 7% of responses indicated a lack of satisfaction. We also received valuable feedback from the comments, which allows us to see the areas of strength and areas where there are opportunities for growth. In the next 8 slides, we will give a summary of responses to each of the questions from the survey. In question 1, we asked, how satisfied are you with the turnaround time of the work of the Office of Legal Services that has rendered for you? Overall, the survey respondents answered 73%, very satisfied and satisfied. In question 2, we asked, how satisfied are you with the sufficiency of the guidance and legal opinion provided to you regarding your legal issue? Overall, the survey respondents answered 86% very satisfied and satisfied. In question 3, we asked, how satisfied are you with the attention given to your legal issue? Overall, the survey respondents answered 83% very satisfied and satisfied. In question 4, we asked, how satisfied are you with the ability of the Office of Legal Services to meet your legal needs? Overall, the survey respondents answered 81% very satisfied and satisfied.
In question 5, we asked, how satisfied are you with the Office of Legal Services in providing your department with updates on the changes in the law? Overall, the survey respondents answered with 76 being either satisfied or very satisfied. Question 6, how satisfied are you that the Office of Legal Services understands your department's legal needs? To that, we received an overall respondent answering with 79% being either very satisfied or satisfied. Question 7, how satisfied are you that the communications, either written or verbal, from the Office of Legal Services are clear, concise, and in an understandable language. Overall, the survey respondents answered with 84% being either very satisfied or satisfied. Question 8, we asked how satisfied are you with the overall services rendered from the Office of Legal Services? And to that, we received an overall respondent answering being 77% either very satisfied or satisfied.
Survey questions 9 and 10 provided opportunities for staff to give feedback regarding concerns, positive interactions, and overall thoughts on the legal department. The survey respondents provided over 60 comments to assist legal in its continuous quest for improvement to better serve this district. Generally speaking, the comments reflected that the timeliness of the response times has improved compared to where we were 2 years ago. However, this was the area with the most opportunity for growth, with a request to solidify the processes, streamline, and increase overall response time. There were also comments on the department being understaffed, one comment regarding active listening and the accuracy of documents, and one comment regarding the follow-up to a Lighthouse complaint.
Notwithstanding the identified opportunities, we are happy to report that a majority of the comments were very supportive, expressed gratitude, and noted appreciation for the work provided by legal services. Staff valued the professionalism exhibited, the collegial approach, the good legal advice, the leadership, response time, listening and broadening of perspectives during discussion, providing regular legal updates, and the sense that the office was very customer-driven.
Legal thanks staff for taking the time to participate in the survey and providing comments. It was very enlightening and allowed us to see what we were doing well and helped identify our blind spots. Based on the survey results, Legal has identified 3 goals for this year in our quest for continuous improvement. 1, communication, 2, improved processes, and 3, filling vacancies. We will also maintain our identified strengths as noted in the survey.
Regarding communication, we will find avenues for more active and receptive listening and being more conscientious of accuracy in our work product. As we practice preventative law, we will find areas where training for staff will also be beneficial. We are also sharing the Legal Quill newsletter to provide tips and updates to staff as an additional avenue to share information. We just completed an in-depth onboarding for Mr. Huffman that included meetings with each department head in academic services. These meetings were invaluable. So much so that we plan on doing this once a year with each division to touch base with our clients and to continue our ongoing dialogues and discuss our expectations. We will improve our processes, especially the contract review process, through collaborative discussion with our stakeholders, standardizing our procedures, and refining our timelines.
Typically, in the private sector, for every $200 to $300 million in revenue, or for every 1,000 employees, it is recommended that you have an attorney. Thus, as noted in the comments, it is true that the legal department has been understaffed. Filling the vacancies with the best possible candidates, one that will complement this team, is imperative, namely an HR attorney, equity coordinator, and a second paralegal to assist this office and support our contract review process. Legal will conduct another survey in March as a mode of measuring the outcome of these 3 goals and follow up for ongoing feedback and dialogue with our clients.
The Office of Legal Services recognizes its critical function and its role in the ongoing successful operation of this district. We reaffirm our commitment to high-quality legal services that meet our clients' needs. We believe in and will continue to employ client-focused, client-driven services. Practicing preventative law is necessary for any organization, especially one like this district that is growing exponentially. Thus, we will continue to identify potential risk and advise as to mitigation to prevent legal exposure. The collaborative, group thinking, unified, centered legal approach allows us to maximize our abilities in this area and in other areas, as this helps us find the gaps in the system so we can address them before they become bigger problems and provide necessary training and guidance to avoid the issue from inception. As part of our ongoing professional development, we have attended all of the Florida School Board Attorneys Association's continuing legal education conferences and actively contribute to statewide legal discussions with our peers. as we strengthen key relationships with colleagues across the state. This is best exemplified by the support we have received from our colleagues locally and across the state during this Hurricane Ian recovery period. The Office of Legal Services is here to support the district's vision to be a world-class school system, advance its mission that each student achieves his or her highest personal potential, and embodies this board's values enunciated in your strategic plan of excellence, integrity, high expectations, accountability, belief in our students, and professionalism. We will do our part to support this board and the administration in the recovery phase after Ian, as well as its continuous pursuit of Envision 2030. We will continue to advance the district's legal objectives collectively through good counsel and legal opinions with integrity and ethics, and be good stewards on behalf of our stakeholders. Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Bernier, staff, thank you for your time and attention today, and we now look forward to the board's discussion.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go with Ms. Vaughn and then Ms. Gittens, please.
Thank you for that, for the information. I'd like to go to the organizational chart for a couple minutes. That's where my questions are. Okay, so the board attorney, Mrs. Dupree-Bruno, is a direct hire from the school board, okay? Everybody else on the chart, whoever it would be who is the board attorney and general counsel, am I correct, would have input, but that would be the superintendent who would actually do the hiring. Is that fair way to characterize that?
So what we have done, for example, with Mr. Corey Huffman's hire.
Is your mic on?
What we have done, for example, with Mr. Corey Huffman's hire, is that we had a very thorough process where we had a meet and greet with academic services because we knew that Mr. Huffman's background, most likely he would fit best there. We also had a meet and greet with HR and some individuals from business services, I believe safety and security as well, so that those individuals from those meet and greets can provide feedback. And then there was also a formal interview, and then Mr. Huffman had a couple of minutes as well with the superintendent. All of these individuals provided some feedback when we were deciding who we were going to hire.
Okay, but the actual hire would be the superintendent.
The way that it's on the agenda, it's a superintendent recommendation, but with all of those caveats.
But with, okay. Now, the other thing is, and you've heard me talk about these organizational charts before. I'm really big on these things because it really helps me visualize who reports to whom. So for instance, all right, so let's use Mr. Huffman for just a minute. Academic services. Should not academic services somehow be on the chart in some, I'm not sure how to do this, but you know, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at equity coordinator as well. Would that be for HR or would it be academic services or both? You see where I'm going with this? I'm looking for, because each of these attorneys, Ms. Upke with business services, it seems to me somehow there's another layer in there. Does that make sense on,
yes,
on who reports to whom and where physically where these people are located in this building, let's say?
So that's a very good point, and to explain, all of them report to me.
Okay.
It's one legal department, and it's an attorney that is supervising the other attorneys and working with the other attorneys. However, these attorneys are assigned to particular locations within the district. So Mr. Huffman is within academic services. He works with academic services on a day-to-day basis. He talks to them. If there's anything that they need, they contact him, and he resolves the situation. So that's how it's structured. So think of it as academic services being Mr. Huffman's client.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, that makes it, and then equity coordinator, again, would that be more HR or more academic services, or both for that position? Wasn't that the one, is this the same position that Crystal
Hudak had.
Torres Nunez had? No, she wasn't, what was, I'm trying to remember.
It was Ryan Hudak's position.
Okay, I wasn't sure who that.
So there was a lot of discussion as to where that position would fall, and it ended up falling in legal. It wasn't legal before when Mr. Hudak had it.
Right.
And then Mr. Hudak was promoted to an assistant school board attorney.
Right.
And that position was then vacant, and so now it's a position that is required, and it's back in legal.
Okay, yeah, and so what I'm trying to remember is, and of course this could have changed, but again, is it more HR situations for equity or academic services, or does it overlap? Because we have, let's see. Yeah, that's what I'm not understanding, where exactly that position, where it falls. I guess there's a description of it, which I don't have.
This position is the person who's responsible for investigation of discrimination complaints. So it's throughout the entire district. So if there's a Title VII alleged violation, this is the individual that would investigate those particular complaints,
Okay.
draft up a report, and then it would go to professional standards if discipline was required. This position also would be the one that would respond to any EEOC or OCR complaints, as Mr. Hudak had done in the past.
Okay.
That's what this position is.
Okay, and my final question is, I probably should have looked this up in job descriptions, but what is for equity coordinator, what are the minimum qualifications? Does a person have to have professional level, legally law school? What are the?
It's helpful for someone who has a legal background, especially if you're going to be responding to EEOC and OCR complaints. I don't have the job description with me right now, but we'll be more than happy to forward it to you.
Yeah, I think since this is an integral part of this whole thing, that, we should take a look also at that to see where this person fits in. So thank you.
Ms. Gittens?
Okay, so on the same slide, and tell me if I'm incorrect in this, it's showing 3 vacancies, but the 2 vacancies, the equity coordinator was Mr. Hudak before he was promoted, so it's been sitting out there for a while because it was not filled, correct?
Correct. Mr. Hudak was trying to do both positions
Okay.
until we could fill it.
And was Mr. Hudak the HR
Yes, he
person?
was.
So even though it's showing 2 vacancies, it has to do with one person at this point?
Well, one person was doing 2 roles, and it's not a good idea for the person who's investigating to
Right.
also be the attorney. So it really, these are 2 separate, distinct positions.
Right, but what I'm getting at with this is someone looking at this saying, oh, so many people have left and all of this. We're looking at one, the equity coordinator was out there in limbo anyway. It was not being filled. And Mr. Hudak vacated the HR attorney position. So basically, that's all that's left. One other kind of technical thing on it, there are no lines to the executive assistant and the paralegal. And I don't know if you, just technicality, if you want to do that somehow. And since the attorneys, the three attorneys and the three attorneys basically, business and services, and academic and HR, are dealing with those departments, are they going to be located in those departments?
So right now, Ms. Supke is in operations, Mr. Hudak is located in academic services, and the hope would be that the HR attorney would also be.
Can you please make the correction? It's not Mr. Hudak.
What did I say?
Mr. Hudak.
Oh, Mr. Huffman is in academic services, Ms.
Right.
Supke is in operations, and the hope is that the HR attorney will be embedded in where they are. And that is the entire concept that we have, is that these attorneys, this is their client, this is who they work for, so they'll be working with them on a day-to-day. There may be things, such right now we're dealing with the hurricane, and there's a lot of legal things that are coming up, so we team together to work on some things as well. But for the most part, everybody has their assignment, and then we come together as a team if there are questions, issues. We meet on a weekly basis. I mean, this is a lot of a team approach in how we practice.
Okay, thank you for that. On slide 10, and you talked about the comments, and the last sentence, generated in excess of 60, and basically you came to a conclusion about them. Is it possible, though, to see the comments? Is that something that we don't want to show, or?
No, we don't
Okay.
have any problems. We'll be more than happy to forward the entire survey to the board.
Okay, because I'm just saying, someone could misconstrue that the way you calculated or chose the most important, and we're not seeing them for ourselves. I think it would be transparent
Yes, no.
to have the comments as well. One of the things I really liked, I think it was Ms. Zupke that mentioned preventative law. I really like that terminology. And if it's something that I think if we look at, prevention is going to save us time, money, and resources. And I just really like that concept of saying that our legal department is practicing preventative law whenever possible. So thank you for that comment. The last thing is the onboarding for the new board members, and I'm sure you'll have that as a part of, explaining all of this to them and where everybody fits and all that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ms. Fisher, please.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation and for the overview. It's very comprehensive. I have observed that we have had hardworking people in the department who have invested time without watching the clock. As the chair last year, I did ask a lot of questions and also was greeted with active listening and sound legal advice. I think that you guys are here and providing assistance, which is much needed in the face of legal issues, which in the last couple of years and months, the political climate has kind of revved things up, and we have had a lot more litigation issues increasing. And so I look at the org chart, and it kind of reminds me of other high-functioning districts like Miami-Dade, although it's a lot smaller than Miami-Dade's. And my hope is that you will continue with the responsive, professional, and flexible services that you have, that you're on the road with. And so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
I'm still listening, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Morgan?
Okay, I have a bunch of questions. Starting on slide 3. So, how do you measure the quality of legal services? What are your deliverables going to be? when you come back to us and say, we're providing high-quality legal services, what's the basis for that comment? And with that, I would say, how does your survey tell you how you move from satisfied to highly satisfied in the various categories? I think that needs to be delineated. With respect to cost-effective, I would presume your success would be that you have no out-of-district or no out-of-house expenses with respect to the traditional services provided by legal teams in-house. And that you would lay that out on a continuum and we would know where you were. Less reliance falls into the same category. Let's see, going on to slide 6, I think. Yes. Okay. So essentially, we've hired generalists in the legal department. Nobody with corporate experience, government experience, or prior public education experience. When you talk about hiring, and the practice has been to advertise for attorneys, not to recruit. I want to know going forward what your practices will be with respect to recruiting an assistant school board attorney for HR and recruiting an equity coordinator, and will your requirements be far more stringent than the very general description that we have for the assistant board attorneys? Because essentially we really should have assistant board attorney HR job description, assistant board attorney academic services job description, assistant board attorney business services and operations experience, and those should have skills and experiences written into them so that when HR is doing the recruiting, and I say recruiting, not just posting, but recruiting, we are getting candidates who are not essentially trainees in their areas of work. Let's see. Slide 6. Oh, I'm on slide 6. Recruit, hire.
Do you want Ms.?
No. Just let me go through my questions.
Okay.
Let's see. I think the next one I want to go to is 7. 7. Slide 7. Oh, no. I'm assuming that in your budget, all these vacancies are accounted for. Okay. Slide 8. So, back to the question of expertise and skill set, experience, et cetera. I mean, essentially, we have attorneys who are managing charter schools who have no experience with charter schools. So basically, they're learning the job on the job. We have public records, no prior experience. My concern is that putting all of these things out here and saying we do all of these things doesn't tell me who's responsible for it in the legal department, what level of expertise they bring to their assignment based on their prior experience in the profession. Okay, slide 11. Okay. You're looking at, your survey was intended to get a general response, but the survey doesn't have a lot of credibility for me because timeliness of work product, you're asking people throughout the district, is the legal department timely? Well, what should the expectation be? Should the expectation be that the legal department responds within 24 hours, that the legal department handles contracts within 7 to 10 business days, that the legal department does whatever? That there should be measurements by which you evaluate. You can't just ask people, was it timely? I mean, timely is what they're used to. And I know there have been issues of timeliness, particularly in the areas of contract. Same thing with sufficiency of legal opinion rendered. When we get to the job description, or no, the evaluation for the attorneys, the Miami-Dade evaluations of their board attorney or their assistant board attorneys has really good criteria for evaluating the quality of the work. So I don't think it's sufficient to say, what is the sufficiency of the legal opinion? Who's, you know, and the other question I would ask with respect to the survey is, well, I asked already what you would take to, what would take you to get from satisfied to highly satisfied. You have no way of knowing that because you haven't got essentially deliverables that you're evaluating. I have one more question. Oh, I have one more question on this slide, and I can't think of it. Let me look at these notes. Oh, I know. The numbers are pretty consistent for each of the responses, for each question. The numbers are fairly consistent, highly effective, whatever, neutral. But what I'd like to know is if you disaggregate those answers by department. For example, if you were to do it by HR respondents, by academic services respondents, by operations respondents, would you get a different response? Essentially, you're looking at a response for the legal department, but you're really not looking at a response for the specific services that each area is providing. So I would like to know to what extent, by department, the measures are consistent with or inconsistent with the overall impression. Okay, so bottom line, surveys need to have benchmarks. They need to have a way by which the evaluator can make a judgment about the quality of the service delivered. Okay, I think, let me just look at Plan of Action 22. Okay. Again, Plan of Action, continuous systemic improvement. How are you going to measure it? What is your deliverable for communications? And how are you going to measure it? What is your deliverable for the contract review process? And how are you going to measure it? HR and staffing is not something that, that will show up in virtually all of the other evaluations. But this is a very generalized overview. It's not a really in-depth, robust look at the operations. When you think about how we evaluate the superintendent, how we evaluate the various departments, the criteria, the data that's used as the basis for the evaluation, this is just simply, not in the same category. We need real data, we need real information, and I would like to see this fleshed out in a much more robust way. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. DeBrie-Bruno, do you have any response to?
So I will try my best to respond to these comments, and most likely there'll be some additional information that will be shared. Some of the points that you have raised, Ms. Morgan, I completely agree with you. That is one of the things that, as the attorneys are working with their departments, and there will be an opportunity for those particular departments to provide feedback specifically on their particular attorney. We're not there yet. Corey just started in August. Shane is pretty much just started and has been trying to fill in since we've been so short-staffed. But you're right, those are things that we will do, and that's a very important thing. So we know, and I know, and the board knows, how are the attorneys doing with their particular departments. So I agree with you on that. Regarding the basis of high-quality legal services, for attorneys, the best way to assess how they are doing with their high-quality legal services is from their clients. We have to hear from our clients, and our clients tell us whether or not they're satisfied or not satisfied. And that's what this survey was. This is our benchmark. This is a start. We have not done this survey before. We're going to do another one in March, and there will be additional surveys that will be very specific to particular departments. But at least this gives us a point where we are beginning. It gives us a benchmark, and then from there we can see if we are improving or not improving and what the concerns are. For us, the comments that were made in the survey were absolutely invaluable. You can tell that staff from all kinds of different departments took the time to give their specific feedback, and it was all anonymous, to let us know exactly what their thoughts are. And we really appreciate that, because that helped us to understand here's where our blind spots are and here's where we're doing a pretty good job. High-quality legal services and the practice of preventative law, sometimes it's hard to find, because if you're not getting that lawsuit, if you're not getting that complaint, that means that we've done our job. So when we are trying to prevent things from happening, which the board doesn't, you're not going to know every single thing that we do to put out fires, to make sure that things are contained, but that means that we're doing our job. And so that's going to be very difficult to quantify, to tell you every single time that we kind of put out a fire, because that is really part of our responsibility. And I know this team takes this very, very seriously. We are very meticulous and very methodical in how we provide advice to our clients. We are very particular in terms of how we do our representation. So I don't know how to define for you what high-quality legal services are, but as practicing attorneys, for us, high-quality legal services means that we're putting out fires, we're protecting the board, protecting the district, and doing things the right way, and that our clients are satisfied with the services that we're providing. Regarding the cost effectiveness, there will always be times where we will have to outsource some things, can't control that. However, if you look at the budget, you'll see that over the last, at least this year from our budget standpoint, and over the past years, the outsourcing has declined. And as we get the attorney to come in for HR, that's even going to be more that we'll be able to absorb in-house. The goal would be for us to take as many things in-house as possible so we don't have to use outside counsel. Right now, we're very limited in what we do with outside counsel, because honestly, I think a lot of the things that we do is better served in-house, because we're able to talk to our clients on a daily basis, understand what their needs are, and meet those needs. So it's really better for the district for us to handle things as much as possible. In terms of expertise, and I know that this has been a concern for you, and I understand it, I get it. I understand what you're saying. I have not been able to find a HR attorney that has the level of expertise that you would like. I have not even offered anybody to interview. It is very, very difficult right now in the job market for attorneys, period. And I have spoken to my colleagues across the state. I have made announcements on FSBAA. I've spoken to particular general counsels. I have requested that HR do a reversed LinkedIn for us to target particular attorneys. I have spoken to our counsels that are our outside counsels to see if they can help recruit and get individuals to come work here in the district in our legal department. It is not easy. It's very, very difficult. I do take some issue, I will tell you, with regards to, for example, Mr. Huffman. Mr. Huffman is exactly where he needs to be with the exact expertise that is needed. That's what he does. Now, he did not do it in public education, but he has done it on the other side. So when you have your staff attorney in the past who would go and deal with the clients, they were dealing with people like Mr. Huffman. He knows both sides. So it's also very sometimes helpful to have somebody who comes in with a different perspective, understands the law, but comes in with a different viewpoint, because all they can do is help us strategize better, help us solidify our defenses better, because they know what the other side is all about as well. So those are some of the things that I think hopefully you will consider when we're talking about expertise. I definitely want to have some individuals that have as much to bring to the table as possible, but I will tell you that the job market is not very easy, and I don't consider all of us generalists. I think that we all have our niches and our specialties. At this point, I think I know public records, I know sunshine, I know policies, I know all of those things that are necessary for a board attorney to know. I've been practicing for a long time, and I've definitely have gained quite a bit through this experience that I've been here for almost, a little over 2.5 years at this point. And each of these attorneys brings their skill set, and together we become a brain trust. So that's how we operate.
And I have one follow-up question, which I missed, and that has to do with communications. One of the things we are not getting is regular reports on Lighthouse, the nature of the problems that are being investigated, because that tells us where we may have problems in the organization. So we're not getting information about where the issues are. And also, I've asked for and not seen, and maybe the rest of the board is not interested in it, but I would really like to know, for all of these ethics complaints, local, state, federal, for all of these investigations we've done, what has the outcome been? I mean, we're learning at the beginning about an ethics complaint. We're learning at the beginning about an investigation. The public is learning about it at the beginning, but we're not getting information at the end. So we're not in a position to turn around and say, well, 6 complaints have been filed in locally, state, and federal courts, whatever, and 5 of them were dismissed. I mean, that says something to the public, that essentially we're being asked by the public to go down rabbit holes, which is a complete waste of legal time. So anyway, I think from a communications point of view, you never address here in your plan of action how you're going to report about the things that matter in terms of us changing things as an organization going forward. So now I think that does it.
So, Ms. Morgan, that's another very good point. Now, there is legal analysis that goes along with what will be, I shouldn't say legal analysis. There are statutory parameters with what can and can't be discussed on the dais. So if I have a whistleblower complaint, somebody has filed a Lighthouse complaint alleging this and that, those things are not supposed to be discussed on the dais, because the statute is very clear that those individuals are provided with confidentiality throughout the entire process. So that's one thing.
And I understand that. The problem is that they've raised a complaint that we need to address as a board. So how do we find out? It doesn't have to be that specific case. It has to be, where are we identifying problems in the organization that we need to address through the Office of Legal Services? So I'm not asking for a case by case in that instance, especially. I'm asking for, how do we identify areas where we are deficient as a result of the complaints we receive?
So that's another very good point, and I actually share your concerns with that. And I think that the new model that we have and remember, when we came to the board in 2021, this model was not very different than what we came with. There was one attorney that was a staff attorney reporting to the superintendent, and everything else was under the board attorney. So it's not that much different. It's just that now we're incorporating all of the attorneys under one umbrella. And this actually is very, very helpful, because when we go, for example, to an HR disciplinary meeting, and there is discussion that this particular individual had this situation and it was or was not captured properly, that lets legal know, okay, now I may have to talk to my counterpart in operations so that she can talk to her executive director to say, here's where we found a system gap. So those are the things that we do on a regular basis. I mean, we do that on a regular basis. It hasn't been reported to the board, but we look for those things all the time. With regards to major investigations, I completely agree with you that when these investigations, because they are out in the public, once they are completed, they should come back, some of them, not all of them, it just depends on what it is, can come back to the dais for a complete discussion, because the board is entitled to get a report and to have a discussion to determine whether or not there's anything else that needs to be done. Before the board, it needs to be shared with the superintendent, and the superintendent can make a determination as to how he wants to move forward if there's anything else that needs to be done. So that's the approach that we will take with investigations. We do receive Lighthouse complaints. A lot of those lighthouse complaints are forwarded to professional standards because they're the ones who do that employment disciplinary investigation. Some of them are more simple. They may go directly to the executive directors. So we don't have a lot of lighthouse complaints that rises to a particular level. What we do have sometimes are situations that are pretty significant, where I would go to the superintendent, be it Dr. Atkins, be it Dr. Savage or Dr. Bernier, and say, Superintendent, I think this one is something that we really need to take seriously because of the ramifications. And when I look at ramifications, I'm looking not only at legal liability, because that's a big issue. I'm also looking at what is the exposure to the district from a public trust factor. I'm also looking at, is this also something that's being reviewed and investigated by the OIG or the USDOE or any other agency? And I need to take it seriously for whatever reason. There's something that has happened that has triggered in my legal analysis that I need to take this seriously. We allow those investigations to take place. We've only really had about 5 of them since last year. And they have, I think, 2 of them were resolved, and the board was advised during one-on-ones and the reports shared. Whenever those reports come out, I always share it with the board. Always share it with the board. So until such time as they come out, and then I have a one-on-one with you, and then from there, if it needs to come out to the public, we can discuss it at that time. But that's basically what has happened with those level investigations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
Thank you. Okay, so I actually have a couple questions, and I'm going to piggyback off a little bit of what Ms. Morgan said, but one of the things I had questions about was back to the chart, the organizational chart. The staff, or the legal staff, where are you located at throughout the district? Are you together? Are you separated? And what is most effective and efficient? I'm just curious. I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that as a team.
I've been asked to address this, so I will be happy to address this. As you are all aware, Ms. Dupree-Bruno is in your suite in the board offices. I am in the academic services suite with the chief of academic services, the deputy superintendent, and the other executive directors. And Ms. Zupke is in the operations offices and the blue zone, where she's close to the directors of operations and other areas.
So, back to my question though, is that most effective and efficient for you guys? So my question really is, should you be together or should you be dispersed out throughout the district? That I'm asking because I don't know what's best for the team.
May I?
Dr. Shana.
At this time, at least for operations, I do believe that being down in operations is effective. We are often in meetings, so we actually travel quite a bit. And what I mean by traveling is we are in different areas throughout the district, throughout many days of the week. And so where my office is now, it is very convenient to be able to have employees, specifically in business operations, be able to access me. They know where I'm at, closer to their area. However, if needed, I know that we've been able to easily make accommodations to be able to meet with our department. I like to go personally to be able to go to their offices and speak with them and in their areas where they feel comfortable, and also that I can address their needs. Many of the conference rooms that are available, we have to reserve anyways, so often we are in more of the general common areas when we meet as larger groups. And when I say larger groups, if we have to pull in multiple team members, even when we are meeting with some of the executive admin directors and chiefs, that is often in, again, areas that are closer to the board office because of where their offices are located.
Thank you.
And we meet every Friday. We meet So we find a place to meet. And there are a lot of times, because we do really believe in that collective brain trust thinking, that we will gather. Sometimes, you'll find all the attorneys in my office, and we're thinking through things. These are my thought partners. I am their thought partner. And we go, because we have a lot of not everyday normal occurrences that happen. I mean, honestly, I don't think since I've been the board attorney that I have had a normal day, because I started right at COVID. So there's a lot of emergencies and significant things that happen on a regular basis. And so we talk all the time. This team talks all the time.
And I just want to add one more thing to that. Many of the departments are integral to each other. So many things, for instance, I'm going to use business operations again, planning and procurement. Procurement has to work with academic services to understand their needs for the equipment, for the services that they are procuring. Same thing with maintenance. That is all in the business, but it goes where we really have to work with each other closely to solve some of the district's complex issues. And if we are not working together to understand those needs, we're not able to properly advise. So that, again, being able to be embedded in our areas, but also be able to utilize, as Kathy had stated, the brain trust of the other attorneys is invaluable to being able to provide integral and thorough legal advice to our areas.
Just to give you an example as to how we process, we had a situation where we had an ESE student who had a transportation issue. So obviously that ESE student problem will become Mr. Huffman's issue, but Mr. Huffman then brings in Ms. Zupke because it's a transportation issue. So we resolve issues because it is a collective problem. We resolve issues together because we're not in silos. This is a district system and it all operates together.
Thank you for that, because I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because I wasn't sure, and so that helps me understand. And I just want to make sure that you're afforded everything that you need to be successful, because then it's what's best for us, right, for the district. So, okay, great. So back to the survey real quick. I had made notes that I think if we had narrowed down my notes were like narrowed down the picture by separating out the departments and what they thought. I think it was just a little too generic. So that was just my notes, and which was similar to hers. I just wrote it differently and say it differently. But, and then my other two question is, how soon do you plan, and I know you I think I already know the answer, but I just wanted to say it. How soon do you plan to hire the 2 open positions that you have open? And, what is your, there has to be some kind of a plan, because then if it doesn't happen, then what happens? Like, there's no goal there.
So the HR position has been advertised since August, and we are not having a robust response, so that's problematic. We have had responses for the equity coordinator position. However, those individuals are not quite qualified for the position. So there is a difficulty with securing individuals. I think we will find an equity coordinator. I am concerned about attorneys because there's just a lot of things with the attorneys that has been expressed to me about working at the district. So.
Another thing that you mentioned, you said you represent your client being the district and the board, but we also represent the people that we serve. And so that's our students and sometimes families or parents. So sometimes I feel like we kind of deviate from who we really are here for. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that back around to the forefront a little bit, because and emphasize that, because I think for me that's really important, that we do what's best for our students, and sometimes it's taking the hit on our side, and we don't do that very well here. It's very difficult for us to kind of own our deficiencies. So I would like to see more focus on that, and I think we're heading that way. I know there's been some resistance because people don't understand that really, that's what we're here for. We're here for the students that we educate and families. So I just want to bring that back up. Right now, who is our outside counsel for the HR position? Like, since we don't have the HR attorney, who are we giving that to right now? Or that work? And how much is it? Like, out of curiosity, I have no idea.
So right now, the HR position is being handled by all three of us. We have an outside counsel that is willing to step in when we need them to step in, but being mindful of cost. Some of these things that we attend are meetings and more administrative functions. I don't want to pay a high-priced attorney to come for administrative function type things, so we've been balancing that ourselves. If we have, for example, an employee termination, we may have an outside counsel because of there may be a conflict issue because the board serves as a quasi-judicial body during that time. But at this time, it's basically us until we can get someone to come help us, unless we actually need to have that outside counsel.
Thank you. What else did I have? Okay. Oh, is there any way we can recruit anyone that we know? I just thought I'd throw that out there, I'm sorry. And so, because I'm always just kind of thinking, just thinking. So, so back to some of the things that Ms. Morgan was talking about, the investigations. I think we we don't discuss it as a board after the fact. And I think it's very important that we need to, because for sometimes some things are just, there's reason they kick it back to us, and then what do we do with it? We kind of do not do anything with it. And so I think we have to be really careful, because I think as a board, we're the ones not addressing the complaints. When people file complaints, they feel like there's something there. They don't do it frivolously, now, despite what some people may think. So I think we need to take ownership of what they think is wrong, and how to better serve someone is to communicate back with them on what we can do better and help them understand. So I think, and I'm going to take it as the board, that's our fault for not addressing once they come back from ethics or whatever, no probable cause or not legal sufficient. That had nothing to do, that wasn't even in their realm sometimes, or they're under their jurisdiction. So then we do nothing with it after it's not always a dead issue. Sometimes it could be issues that we really just need to look at and see what we can do better. I'm all about learning from what someone sees that we're doing something wrong, and if we can make it better, that's what we should be doing. But sometimes we just stay silent. And so I think that I believe looking at it and addressing it, even if it's after the fact, and even if we weren't found doing anything major wrong, what can we, like I said earlier, what can we do better and learn from what happened so it doesn't happen again? It's all a learning process. And I think I appreciate your team, and you'll have an opportunity now. I think it's kind of a new team technically, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what this team can do working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. Okay. I think that, wow, there's so much, I have 5 pages of notes. I think the survey, if we had seen the survey, because I was looking at that as well, as how can it possibly, it's great that they were all the same, pretty much on all the slides. They were so close in that, but we do have that 7%. So that 7% of unsatisfied, what is that for? We haven't touched base on that. So that's something, again, it's a tool that we can use to improve. So I think that if we were able to have seen that, I think that would have given us a little bit, more of a, oh, okay, this is what they're talking about in all the questions. So I would love to see that as well. Let's see. And as far as the reports, we have done that before, where and had been asked about giving the reports that had gone, like any kind of complaints that had gone up. And we had, that's probably been like a year or so ago, where we actually said there were 25 reports and this is what the findings were. There were no findings, or whatever that was. And so that did come back, but that's been quite some time ago when that took place. But when they do come back, when reports come back, from the state, it does tell us it's now on us to do something with those. So it's not that they just sit there, they are moved to the superintendent's, correct?
So it depends on what we receive. If you're referring to OIG.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when we get, depends on how they send it. OIG complaints can come in with a note saying, here is a report, please district handle it as you deem appropriate. So when we get those types of reports, those are usually the lower level concerns. They're sent to the appropriate department to deal with. I don't even know what happens to them next. I mean, I have a spreadsheet where I keep my OIG complaints, and then if I get an update, I'll update that spreadsheet. Then we'll have a report that is a little bit more significant. District, go ahead and review this and then send us your report. We want to know how that was taken care of. So at that point, we handle it. Either it's handled in-house, or we, depending on what the matter is, it may be sent off to an external investigator. There was one that legal actually handled in-house ourselves because it was more of a legal question. And then those reports are drafted and they are sent then to the OIG's office. And then the OIG will say, yes, we've accepted this, or no, we have not accepted this, just depending on what it is. So that's how those are. And we try to send the board a quarterly update on the OIG complaints. I'm not sure when's the last time that we sent one, but I know in the past we haven't sent one. So I'll make sure that we send an update on the OIG complaints. Thank you. Which is different because not all OIG complaints are the external investigation complaints.
Correct. So, but yeah, if that could be sent out, because I hear that that is being stated. And then also the organizational chart, it's really good, and it shows the direct report. So that's with the lines, so that's very clear on how that is working there. So if we could get, I know people had asked for the copy of the surveys, if we could get that possibly, please. And then if we could get the report, the quarterly report for the Lighthouse complaints as well, so those two.
The Lighthouse complaints, you receive that, I believe, monthly. It's what I receive from Lighthouse. They'll just send something that says you had 3 HR complaints or 2 ethics complaints or what have you, and that's what I forward to the board.
Okay, so that's being done, and then, sorry, outside. And I know that, Mr. Prebrunner, you and I have had this conversation about the open door policy, that I really believe that that's something that we all should have, and that's in communication and having that open dialogue, so that way, if we have questions, if you have questions of us, that we have that communication going, because we have to have that for all of us to have a good understanding and working relationship. So I just really appreciate that as well. And I know, Ms. Gittens, I see your hand. So let me go ahead and let you go.
Oh, no, are you finished?
Well, no, I think that everyone, based on what the conversation has been and all the notes that, I think everybody really has covered pretty much everything on this. And
I just have one comment based on
yes, go ahead.
The revolving conversation about, and they told us in the very beginning that this survey was a beginning, it was a start, and we have to keep in mind the fact that we don't, if it was anonymous, and then you say you want to know what each department is saying, it kind of negates the fact of being anonymous. This one is like the 500-degree level to see in general where we are. As individuals are placed in the different departments, it's my understanding that after that has had an opportunity to work, then having another survey where those departments can say, yes, this is good, this is bad, whatever. But I think it's a little premature to find out now what each department is saying, instead of looking at it in a generic way. These are overall areas. Everyone is in the process of organization and creating this process. And I think we just need to kind of let that flow for a bit. Once we've got people in each position and see how this is working, then go back and do a survey. And then you have, it's like you were saying in the departments, it's like they're working for their clients. Well, then you would have clients that would have a good idea how to do a survey and to give their input. I think it would be much more meaningful to do it then.
Well, and I thank you, but my thing was, we do have a survey, and we see the percentage of the survey, and listening and looking at all of those, and it's stating how great everything is, I did not hear once what that 7% was. How were we going to address that 7%? What was that? I mean, it could be very minute, but what was that 7%? Because that helps us grow. It helps us to understand if there is something that needs to be addressed, and there was nothing at all about, it's just a number, that it was 7%.
But Madam Chair, if I may, that was why I think a few of us asked for the full report that has the comments. I think the comments will give us that information.
No, and I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, as general, in looking at this, where are we, what do we see as an improvement?
So, Madam Chair, if I may, to keep it in context.
Yeah.
You're always going to have some individuals that feel that you can meet their needs a little bit better.
Right.
And that's okay, and that's what we want. We want to continuously improve. I will tell you that from the comments, especially from the first question, you will see that there were a lot of concerns about the contract review process. We know that, we accept that. There was also a lot of comments that the process has improved over the past 2 years, and even that the process has improved over the past 6 months. So we understand that, and that's something that's on our list as goals to improve on. So you'll see a lot of comments on that. But to keep it in perspective, we had 75 responses, and out of the 75, 5 people said they were unsatisfied or very unsatisfied.
But just your statement that you just made, that shows that is a goal now that we have. So
yes.
that's good.
Yeah,
Because you understand that is something that we have to look at. So that's not, to me, it's not a negative, that's a positive, and now we know how to move forward. So thank you for that. Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, I have a couple comments based on my board colleagues' comments. We are in the position of being a huge school district, and if you look at the number of employees and our budget and all of that, we should be able, or if we were in the business world, we would be able to hire what I'm going to just call high-priced attorneys. However, I'm going to use an example from operations. That's been a position, for instance, that's been open for a really, really long time. And just recently, through recruitment, Dr. Bernier had, he briefed all of us on that in the one-on-one, what he felt was just an excellent, excellent choice. However, in the end, we could not offer that individual based on that person's expertise and experience. We couldn't offer him what he needed to move here. And I feel like we're really over a barrel here with the same thing with our attorneys, especially how things have changed in recent years. If we look at local talent in Lee County, some of the huge law firms, frankly, the people that are there are not going to, no matter what their concept is, there's some people that say, oh, they don't want to come to the school district because blah, 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 and, something negative. No, I think they're in a huge successful practice, and they see themselves moving up, becoming partners, making, I don't know what the highest paid attorneys in Lee County make, but no, they're not going to come here. If we look at Miami-Dade, I'm guessing that the first thing that's going for Miami-Dade is that there's more of an abundance of attorneys on the East Coast. And again, you're going to have people that don't want to relocate here, that love the urban nature of where they are. I mean, it's a whole different, so what, it seems to me the only thing we can do is pay more money, but we don't have that money to pay. So it's a real conundrum to be this high-level district, and yet sometimes we just can't attract what, you know, I agree with Ms. Morgan that let's try to get these people with this expertise, but on the other hand, I can see where the labor market just doesn't bear that out.
To your point, Ms.
So
Vaughn,
what do we do?
To your point, Ms. Vaughn, there was an attorney who had a lot of experience in construction real estate that would have been an excellent ad for us. Talked to this particular individual multiple times, an attorney who's local here, and basically told me, you can't afford me. So it's that plus additional factors that these lawyers are looking at that is, I think, giving us a little bit of a hard time. So, and when I say can't afford, we're talking about an excess of $250,000.
Yeah, well, and just for the future sake of, I won't be here, but there'll be always 7 people up here, that budget is going to have to be a discussion in a workshop. The T word, taxes. I don't know what's going to happen, but to me, who won't be here, the bottom line is we are this district up here with these people, and yet the very top individuals, not just for our legal department, but for instance, that operations chief, we can't afford them, and we're going to lose them. So I'm just making that comment on, since taking notes on topics to be dealt with, what do we do? How do we find the money? I mean, it's going to have to be dealt with, or we're going to be in, well, a bad situation. And the other thing I wanted to mention was regarding some of my colleagues' comments about the complaints. I think this is something that needs to go somewhere on this, you know, whose responsibility is it on getting information back to the board, because there have been too many complaints that I've been aware of, and then all of a sudden we get the message, well, the OIG or whomever on the state level, or, you know, wasn't going to take that up, kicked it back to the district, and then with no consultation with the board, just closed it. And I appreciate the comments that were made that, okay, maybe it wasn't something where we need to, what's the word that I want, go after this person, or, you know, that there'd be a legal or ethical consequence. But as a couple people have said, obviously somebody typically it's in the community, had an issue with something. And maybe it's just our appearance of doing something wrong in this area, but I think that's a communication piece. Not sure where exactly it would fall in this organizational plan, but I feel like that's a piece that we have to be made aware of in a more timely manner. So those are my two comments regarding colleagues' comments.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just want to, as we're talking about attorneys' qualifications, expertise, and salaries, not to overlook the fact that we actually have good lawyers here. I think sometimes, and I know some board members may not agree, but I will tell you that you have good lawyers, and we're actually fortunate to be able to have the attorneys that we have so far that are still here. So I want to be careful with that and make sure that the attorneys understand that they are appreciated and valued by the board and by staff, because that's very important to want to make sure that you're appreciated in the place that you work. And they are good lawyers. I mean, they do good work.
I just want to clarify that I didn't mean to disparage people that we already have and we're lucky to have, but often the good people tend to move on and move up, right? And so, again, as a district, again, I won't be here, but the district's going to have to look at that, or we're going to have every good person that we have stay here for a while, move on, move up, and the people that are outside that have the level of expertise that we want are already too high priced. So I'm recommending that discussion of where this money is going to come from and the T word, tax, is investigated by a future board.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. I have that. I'm going to call on Ms. Morgan, and just as a reminder.
Ms. Morgan is going to say that we need to move on.
I was just going to say we have 20 minutes over.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So we're 20 minutes over. You have 1 second.
Real quick. Thank you, because I was going to ask about the update for some of the legal issues that we have outstanding or whatever, just so you mentioned that, because we haven't had an update. It was mentioned here, so I had that back on my notes. But the other thing that I thought was important that we didn't talk about, what is the superintendent's needs in this legal team? And actually, this is for Dr. Bernier, and are they being met? Because I think that's really important in this whole legal team.
Dr. B.
Several of you have asked me before about the model of this legal team. Let me start there. The model of this legal team is one that I'm comfortable with the general counsel being the employee of the board, and then sort of building within the organization its own legal firm. To date, through the hurricane and previous to this, I've had great service from this department, and I've yet to find a conflict with their legal advice. Kathy is open, at least to me, when we go back and forth with each other on occasion. And then she lawyers up on me and she tells me the way it needs to be. I do, and Kathy knows this, Kathy and I both share common friends in the legal community. We check on each other's answers with each other. We know that we work together to drive a better day in our school district, and I believe that the other attorneys surrounding her and her paralegal have the expertise we need to move forward. Not everybody rolls into a school system with a set of skills. I believe that Kathy's done a great job of finding lawyers who have skills and can adjust to the nuances of Lee County. If we were to hire a big attorney out of Tallahassee, they would have to make the adjustment to the school district of Lee County. So I was part of the survey. I provided my responses, and I stand by them.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, other than one other recommendation. I think that we should have a survey about our board, like they did. I think from to hear what the staff thinks about us, I think the survey was great. So thank you. And
I would love to do that one.
Yeah.
I won't be here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pre-Bruno. I really appreciate it.
Do it in a month and a half.
Thank you all for being here. And as I stated, we are 25 minutes over. And we have one more item, which is the evaluation instruments, and that would be Dr. Savage is coming back to us. Thank you, Dr. Savage.
It's my pleasure, Madam Chair, and I'm going to try to move briskly because I know we're behind schedule.
And I know we have multiple items on here, so if you can tell us which one we're on, so if we need to open it up. Is that the...
Yes, we are, so this is another one of the pieces that was moved from the September meeting that was canceled.
Thank you.
I'm trying to start this show. Without further ado, just to orient to where we are, it's actually following the legal updates, a perfect place to do it. We're going to be over our overview of the process as well as the interim instrument. So first, I just want to kind of level set with the proposed fiscal year 24 and beyond, the evaluation, looking at the evaluation not as a singular event, but as an annual process. I think it's very important to kind of frame this is really what it looks like at the annual level. So one piece I want to draw your attention to is between May and June, there's that opportunity to update the evaluation. That's the best time to make adjustments to any of the instruments, to revise the process, to add additional elements if there's needs not being met. Because any other time that you're making adjustments, then you're essentially moving the goalposts while the game is in progress. And so to be fair to all parties, that's the other piece. The other aspect is it puts stress on the system when we're not prepared for each segment of this process. So I wanted to give you what it looks like in the best case scenario in the fiscal year 24, so that as we move to this year and how we're having to amend, this gives you a sense of what we'd like to get back to or to if we haven't been ever on that piece. And so the first thing I want to address, it's a new element, is the utilization of a 360-degree assessment, as well as something I think came in the last, a comment that was made by Ms. Morgan specifically to the data and the outcomes. And I think this segment of the process could be very helpful in that. So the first is the board attorney going through a non-evaluative 360-degree assessment process. So it's a more robust method to collect feedback from a multitude of stakeholders. So that provides a lot of results to the board attorney to take under consideration for her own professional development, as well as just the disposition of the entire legal services. But additional to that is that last bullet, performance outcomes being compiled for the completed fiscal year. This and that performance outcome would be in the form of a report that would be largely quantitative. But the idea is to just track those annual metrics over time so that there is a more objective way of evaluating performance and outcomes. And I think that's going to have to be a work in progress, but you saw at least an attempt today. You heard some of at least the work that has been done quantitatively, but this could really be looking at a lot of other pieces. So that's one aspect that would occur from July through August of the fiscal year. Next, immediately following that segment of the evaluation process comes the interim evaluation, which is where we are presently. This is the critical deliverable that has to happen. And essentially, what happens here in the interim piece is that the board attorney furnishes information for the board members to consider, but then the board members individually rate the superintendent in this interim evaluation. The challenge that we of course have is that we don't presently have an interim evaluation instrument within our adopted board protocol manual. However, we do have something that is set up as an interim evaluation for the superintendent in that same manual. And so later you'll see one of the attachments I'll be referencing is I've tried to replicate what you have in the manual for the board attorney utilizing the existing tool that you have. And the benefit of that is that we can amend that at any time. If you choose to change the final evaluation, it can be very easily modified to line up And we'll go over that in a little more detail. But again, this is just the process. The idea being that on September 15th, the board attorney would furnish that piece as well as that annual report, those outcomes, and then the board members could begin their interim evaluation. They would then conclude it within 3 weeks, October 8th, and then October 15th. All those would be compiled and sent to the board attorney for her edification and continued opportunity to improve performance. Moving into the final evaluation segment, which would be the next segment of time, the critical dates would be March 1st, 22nd, 30th, and April, and that again replicates what you just saw, the difference being that they would be using the final evaluation instrument, and also that there's a public presentation in April and board discussion that is scheduled no later than April 15th. This is derived from your current board policy in terms of these dates, and so this is just an opportunity again to revisit where we're headed. So for this year, because we clearly are not able to make those deadlines for at least the interim piece due to Hurricane Ian, if this is what had been proposed for September. Now, my understanding is that the board attorney has actually talked with each board member that because of this obvious impact to our community and to our operations, that the end of October would be sufficient in terms of at least issuing an interim instrument. So that still gives us a couple weeks to get that done, and then that feedback would be furnished to the board attorney for her to consider, and then we could still stay on schedule relative to the final evaluation, which occurs in April. In order to do that, though, we would have to also start to begin the conversation of if we're going to change the current final evaluation instrument, there is time to do that. So on the modified timeline you have in front of you, really between the months of November and February, there is the opportunity for not only a 360 to be deployed potentially, but also that an evaluation instrument should be selected and finalized prior to engaging in the actual evaluative aspect of it. So that's really a pretty critical piece, but it doesn't have to be decided today. Today, however, we really should be moving towards closure on the interim evaluation because you have essentially 2 weeks from today. So if we couldn't come to closure on at least for this year an interim tool, that would be problematic in terms of honoring that obligation, which actually was due October 15th. Which was a couple days ago. So that said, as I've mentioned already, because the instrument there was not an instrument, a board-approved instrument in the protocol manual, I have taken the liberty of producing an interim evaluation draft that is one of the attached items. You actually have a printed copy of that draft in your possession right now. It's only 5 pages. And that does, again, if you were to match it up right against the protocol manual interim, you'll see that they line right up in terms of the approach. As I mentioned also, and I think it bears repeating, the interim evaluation, this approach of essentially listing out the standards and then having the strengths of what's working and then opportunities for improvement, is powerful because you can use that same approach no matter if the standards change. So if you were to move to a completely different type of tool, let's say you adopt a different district's approach, you could very easily pivot the same structure towards that, and I think it just makes for better continuity. So I wanted to make sure I brought that first today because that's really the most urgent business of today. I also just want to do, the next part is very brief, and it's just an orientation to 6 samples that have been pulled across our entire state. The first, of course, is our existing school district instrument, which you all know and are familiar with. But the second, from samples 2 through 6, what I've really done is arrange them in kind of an order of a high granular level of detail where there's a lot of, and so I'll start with sample 2 because you're already familiar with the first sample, but which is the Miami-Dade. This was referenced in an earlier conversation as well. What really stood out to me as I brought that piece forward was just that it has the most indicators as well as client feedback forms. So there's a lot of detail specific to this piece, a significant level of detail. The next segments, both from Brevard, Clay County, and Pinellas, they're a more moderate level of detail. They have fewer indicators, but they still are very robust in terms of their descriptions and really do get into a lot of specific detail. One thing I would say to pay particular attention to, and I did put this directly into the slides, some of the models really go into a general counsel model evaluation, even if they're labeled as such, and really talk about some of the very specific additional things that a general counsel has to do, where a school board attorney who isn't a general counsel, there would be some deviation there. And so I did designate that on those slides with those different samples that you've been provided. Last but not least in that spectrum was the Alachua School Board Attorney. This one really was more of a minimalist approach, with very open-ended, qualitative only. There's no quantitative rating other than at the very end, and it's specifically the judgment of the rater, as well as just one qualitative section to give a piece. That really kind of, in my mind, on one side you have that extraordinary level of detail with the Miami-Dade, all the way down to this real minimalist level, and then everything in between. And so I wanted to make sure you had at least exposure to the full gamut of the tools that are currently being utilized within the state. And these are good samples as a starting point. So before I turn things over for comments, I just wanted to reiterate just a couple quick things. One is really the main ask for today is to come to closure on the interim tool to be used so that we can quickly implement that piece. In no way does that bind us that we have to use it indefinitely or in perpetuity, but it would allow us to proceed today with a critical milestone. The secondary piece is that this is really designed to initiate a deeper conversation for the future. And so if, as board members, taking the time to review these sample tools, you find that there are some that you would like a deeper discussion on, that would be a wonderful follow-up in a future meeting where we could really dig into specific tools, get into deeper questioning around aspects that we like, and here's what we like about it. And those are things that we could certainly do, and there's no pressure to do that today. So I just wanted to kind of do that quick recap, and now I will turn things back over to Dr. Bernier, obviously board attorney, if you're free as well on this, and board members.
Madam Chair, I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Ladies, start with Ms. Morgan, then Ms. Gittens, please.
I love your schedule. That's fantastic. That's what we need with all of our business. We need to know when in the year we're going to be asked to make certain decisions. So thank you for that. And then that's all I'm going to, I'm fine with the interim evaluation. I can work with it, whatever. But I do want to talk about the samples you gave us. I loved the Miami-Dade because, I made some very pointed comments about not having data with respect to legal services. Miami-Dade really spells out what you expect an attorney to do and are they actually doing it. And so I thought that instrument they use ought to be used for the assistant board attorneys with dropping the management piece. I think there were 5 sections. You really only need to do 4. The 5th is really the management piece, and that's the board attorney. And then I think the board attorney needs to have, or the general counsel needs to have a different tool, some of which can be extracted from the Miami-Dade. We always sit here and say, I don't know how to judge. I don't know how to judge. If you look at the Miami-Dade form, you will see that they're saying, not does the board attorney provide, not does the board attorney provide legal advice. Does the board attorney sort out the extraneous stuff quickly and get the job done? I mean, it's those kinds of comments that I think are informational in terms of professional development, quality of service, and that kind of thing. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, please.
Thank you. Yes, Miami-Dade's is good. I think we need to look at others as well, like Brevard's, to kind of do a combination rather than just selecting one, because there are positive points for each. My suggestions, I have a couple of specific ones, just with wording on 1.05, recommends outside counsel in collaboration with the legal team. And I know it makes it a little bit longer, but otherwise, it puts, the way this is written, everything is on the attorney. And it does not speak of collaboration. And if, let's say, the HR attorney has an issue and comes to the attorney and says, you know, I think we need to do an outside attorney with this because blah, blah, blah. It's a team, and they talked about the team effort. So that's just a thought, if you would like to. On 2.04, when necessary, communicates legal concepts to the public. This kind of brings up something that I just want to throw out there. I think having, again, let's give the example of something with HR. To have the HR attorney, along with staff, making the announcements to the public makes it a little more valid. And if there are questions that this, like if it's a news conference or whatever, press conference, that's the person that's doing that work. So why wouldn't we have that person that's doing that work and knows how far we can go and we can't go, to have them included in that presentation to the community? I'm just thinking it is very much transparency to me, just my own thought. Otherwise, nothing else I have to say, except I think we need to look at all of those concepts and pick the best of the best.
Anyone else? Comments, Ms. Fisher?
Thank you, yes, and I am fine with the interim evaluation for now. I'm looking at 204, when necessary, communicates legal concepts to the public, and I think that often happens from the dais, and actually, in the past, we've had an attorney who gave a legal minute and gave the public some information on concepts. For the final evaluation, I would also like to see us look at Miami-Dade's and Broward's, because Broward's does encompass the criteria and the components for general counsel as well as school board attorney. So those are my comments, and thank you for the presentation. Great work.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Mr. Giovanelli, did you have?
Actually, Mary pretty much said what I would agree. I think pick and choose some of the Miami-Dade is so detailed, it's a little long. and Broward, so I think pulling from both and with your expertise and picking out, I think would be really good from Brevard as well. And I'm okay with the interim as well. I mean, I think now we just need to get it done. We're running out of time and we need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
I don't have additional.
Okay, thank you, and this is fine with me as well. And I was going to say same thing for, thank you, Ms. Fisher, 204, which is, yeah, this is where it normally comes from. And if we could do a marriage between the two of those, I think would be, because the one is very, very detailed for sure. So if we could take that and work, it's always good to borrow things from other places. So if we can look at both of those, I know you could come up with something great for us. I really appreciate it. But this is good. Thank you so much. And what do you need from us?
Well, I heard, I mean, anything else from Dr. Bernier or Madam Dupuy-Bruno? So essentially, what I heard today was we're ready to proceed with the interim. There was some minor wordsmithing. One thing I would just draw your attention to, unlike the other evaluation we talked about where you have to rate individually, these are clustered together. So really the spirit of what it is you're after, you can put comments to it. So there's less dependency on exact wording to be perfect today. But certainly for the final evaluation, we would want every single indicator to reflect the language that you want. Definitely, you know, I would share your thoughts about what you had mentioned in the different tools. The Miami-Dade, by nature, that's when I actually think of Dr. Bernier's he talked about his Post-it notes, and on one side you have here, and the other side you have here, and everything in between. That's really, Miami-Dade was by far the most detailed example we found, but some of the ones in the middle were very robust as well. Just the language that they used, it really was, so certainly no problem at all to try to dig on this and bring back something in the next meeting where we can talk about a final that looks at those two that you've mentioned today, both the Brevard and the Miami-Dade model. We're happy to bring those back and do a little deeper dive on the final instrument, but this should allow us to proceed with an interim over the next few weeks, the next couple weeks rather. So I believe the expectation was by the end of October. Dr. Bernier appreciates milestones such as Halloween. So if we can have both evaluations completed by Halloween, I believe that was what you had said as well, Attorney Bruno?
Yes, that'll be fine, thank you.
So you'll just send those to actually, I believe with these, you can send them directly to the board attorney because they don't have to be compiled. There's no quantitative rating, unlike the final, which does require a numeric compiling. So these, when you are completed, please send them directly to the board attorney, but I'm happy to assist in any way that you need up until that time period.
Okay,
any questions for me?
Well, I think Ms. Morgan had her hand up.
I did, and it's a comment really about, not for you, but for the board attorney. Actually, for the survey, you might consider looking at some of the Miami-Dade performance criteria and using those as elements of your survey because they are much more specific than than a generic question. So that's my comment. Thank you very much.
And I have one more comment. When we're looking at these and it says like prepares or approves contract as forms, even though Mr. Bruno may not be doing that, the people under her are responsible for doing that. So indirectly, it is her responsibility. So I just wanted to put that, I know because we had mentioned about other people being responsible for certain things where in the end it is Mr. Bruno. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that when we're looking at these
Madam Chair,
things.
if I may to
Yes,
that
ma'am.
comment, that was not what I was saying. I was not taking the
Oh,
responsibility.
this was nothing to do with you. I'm just saying in general, because I looked at the one here that stated contracts. That's why I was making that comment.
Okay.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Are we going to get these resent to us again with the timeline, just a reminder? Thank you.
And the non-draft versions, that's you'll get the emails today.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it then, unless you have something else, Dr. Savage?
Thank you.
No, thank you so much for doing this, appreciate it. Okay, so the next we are finally we've completed all of this, and it is now 4:45, and we have the good of the order is next. So Ms. Fisher, do you have anything for good of the order?
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
I don't know if we were going to discuss any of the, I thought it was going to happen a little more tonight, of just the how schools and getting an update for the reopening of schools. So I'll just wait. I'll hold my comments till then. Thank you.
Ms. Gittens, please.
I'll hold mine till this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
I'll give comments this evening.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I have one comment, and that is that I would really like the board chair to contact Mr. Quick and get a written update with respect to the whistleblower investigation, what has transpired, what remains to be done, where it is stuck. Thank you.
I will send that out directly. Ms. Patrica, good of the order? Good of the order? Okay, I have nothing for good of the order. Mr. Bruno?
I have nothing, thank you.
Dr. Bernier?
Only because some really amazing things have happened. In the course of our meeting, we now have Dunbar, Pine Island, Gulf that are complete and ready to reopen. They will reopen on Friday. That is the last of our K-8, K-12 system that can open. Diplomat and Lexington will begin Thursday. with their reunification meetings. Diplomat will be doing that at Ida Baker. Lexington will be doing that at Cypress Lake High School, and then they will begin instruction in FOVS until such time as their buildings are ready, which are 10/31. So just want to thank everybody on the team and this board for its patience. By Friday, all of our children who are coming back to school, and most of our staff, because we're happy to report about a 90% attendance rate today, actually above 90% attendance rate for our teachers today, we will have all of our schools open. So just want to thank you for that opportunity. Look forward to giving you a bigger brief in the future. And just since I don't know if anybody will turn into our action meeting, I'm trying to just do this once a year for my mom, my pink ties, and remembrance of my mother and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So just want to have an opportunity for all of you to, I know we'll get some more of those other things that go in the month of October when you give your final comments today. But again, thank you for your patience. Thank you to my team for all the work they've accomplished. And we know this is just the beginning. This is a false finish line. I mean, there's still significant issues to overcome as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And seeing no other business to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned, and we will resume at 6 o'clock. Thank you.